Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. І хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 854 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And a major escalation has occurred today. North Korea is sending troops to Russia, and also Putin is giving nuclear weapons to North Korea. So it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of not only the news of the war in Ukraine, but news around the world, as we've been able to get breaking news today that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, also called North Korea, has declared that they will be sending a combat engineering brigade to Ukraine.
Back.
I hope we're back. And we're back. Welcome back, everyone. Sorry about that. Apparently there was a small little interruption right there. But nevertheless, getting back into the breaking news that we have tonight, in the general overview, North Korea is going to be directly joining the war in Ukraine, as they are going to be providing an entire combat engineer brigade to the Russian Federation, which will be moved into the area of Donetsk within under a month. We have also been able to get breaking news today from the area of the Korean Peninsula that the North Koreans have announced that they have now been able to successfully develop a multiple independent re-entry vehicle, otherwise called a MERV, and we've also been able to hear that the Russian Federation is apparently providing vital components and information for North Korea's nuclear and missile development programs. We also heard that the North Koreans attempted to conduct a hypersonic missile test today, which was unsuccessful, and at the exact same time, it appears that South Korea is also beginning to equally escalate as well, as they are now conducting military exercises on the islands within the area of the demarcation zone west of the city of Seoul. We were also able to get news from the Middle East, as it appears that Israeli Defense Forces are continuing to build up their forces along the area of the northern Israeli border, and it does appear, according to our information, that an Israeli invasion of Lebanon will most likely be imminent, most likely within the next week or several weeks at this point. We've also been able to get more official confirmation from foreign governments that does appear that the Israelis will inevitably launch an invasion, as the United States Department of State today announced that they will most likely be conducting an evacuation of U.S. citizens from the nation of Lebanon here within the near future. Meanwhile, outside of the Middle East and in the area of South America, we were able to hear that a very interesting military coup was conducted in the capital of Bolivia, which appears to have ended in complete failure. But the entire saga of that event was so entertaining, we had to make sure to include that not tonight for all of y'all, because it's an insanely funny story from beginning to end. But moving on all the way from that into Ukraine, we then got even larger and more interesting news from Ukraine as well, as we got breaking news that the Ukrainians are once again striking Russian air defense systems around the city of Belgorod, and not only that, are inflicting high losses on the Russian Federation forces within the area of the battlefield of Vovchansk. At the exact same time, in Bakhmut and Avdiivka, it appears that Ukrainian forces are continuing to slow down or completely halt Russian offensives and inflict incredibly high casualties onto attempting Russian forces. This day has been one of the most insane and one of the most news-filled days that we have had, not just about the war in Ukraine, but around the entirety of the world over the past 24 hours. And that is going to be taking us now into the specifics of the news, because we still have a lot more news rather than the main topics that I just covered, into North Korea, where we have been able to hear one of the most shocking announcements so far of the war in Ukraine, and probably one of the most destabilizing developments currently going on within the area of East Asia. We have been able to get an official confirmation from the North Korean government that North Korean troops will enter the Russian Federation in less than a month. According to the information that we were able to get from the Kyiv Post, the June 19th defense pact signed between the Russian and North Korean states included a promise to provide military assistance to one another. Within days, Pyongyang said it was sending troops to Ukraine. According to the information that we have in greater detail, it appears that the North Koreans are going to be sending one of two kinds of troops, or forces for that larger matter. We understand that the first statement we've heard is that they're going to be sending a combat engineering brigade into Donetsk, Donetsk being the oblast centrally located within eastern Ukraine. According to the information we've been able to find on this combat engineering brigade, it doesn't appear that it'll be that well put together, and it will largely be of a brigade size, consisting of a number of 3,000 to 5,000 North Korean troops being moved into the region. A combat engineering brigade is not necessarily a frontline fighting brigade in most instances, unless if one of the countries involved was seeking to conduct an offensive. Then a combat engineering unit could most likely be well used in an offensive operation. And currently, the Russians are conducting an offensive operation within the area of Donetsk around the direction of Avdiivka, and particularly around the small village further north of Avdiivka of Ochrytine. From what we know, the North Koreans may deploy this combat engineering brigade into this area in an attempt to assist Russian forces in an offensive that would try to drive further into Donetsk and towards the major city of Pokrovsk, really one of the last major cities that Ukraine controls within this area of the Donetsk Oblast. Another bit of information that we've heard for the large part from the United States Department of Defense is that these troops may not be that high quality. They may not be a combat engineering brigade. They may just be meat for the cannon fodder machine for the large part that the war has turned into. We don't really know a lot about that, rather than the blanket statement that it may be that kind of a quality of force that the North Koreans are going to send. So we understand that it will be one or the other at this moment. And we will be trying to get more information as time goes by about what kind of force the North Koreans will be sending, what kind of information we will be able to gather of their weapon systems and their tactics, and I'll also be making sure, because now I have to go and buy a whole new round of books, to start reading as much as I possibly can about North Korean military tactics to try and figure out what they would be conducting on the battlefield once they get directly involved in this conflict, as we are fairly certain that this North Korean unit will not be moving into Donetsk to conduct policing or peacekeeping operations inside of the occupied territory. They are most likely being moved in to conduct some sort of frontline action with the Russian Federation. situation. Also, I see a lot of people saying that I'm talking very quickly. This is a deliberate thing tonight because we have an insane amount of news bulletins to cover. I believe we have about 50 of them. And usually we want to make sure that our news segment is about an hour and 50 minutes to 2 hours and 10 minutes long at the longest it can be. And so I'm trying to make sure that I keep up a fast enough speed where we can get through all of this and then get into the Ukraine war news as well and give equal time to all of it. Because the amount of breaking news today, I am not exaggerating, is unbelievable. We've rarely ever had a day like this in the history of the war, or really in the history of the world as far as our coverage goes. So I'm having to cover it at a really fast pace. But moving on from
the news today has been insane. Like this, the gravity of the news that came out today. We haven't had news like this in probably months. This is massive news. I saw some people trying to like tamp it down in the comments earlier today. And while I understand you don't want to fearmonger, there's no need to do that. We have it under control for the moment. But this is pretty big news, what North Korea is doing with Russia, and it can't be understated that this could have consequences for the entire region.
It could have massive consequences for the entire region. As we heard that the North Koreans were going to be sending these troops, we apparently started to also get some very clear indications that the Chinese apparently are not that on board with this idea at all, as we already started to hear literally within an hour of the statement being made by the North Korean government that representatives of the People's Republic of China openly started to condemn North Korea and the Russian Federation, saying that this would stoke further conflict in the region and destabilize the area. This is something that is starting to show us that the Chinese are not lock in step with the North Koreans and Russians so far with the war in Ukraine, and especially with its underlying consequences that could be felt within the areas of East Asia. As many of y'all know, and we've covered incredibly large amount of times on this channel, the People's Republic of China, also called just China in general, is trying to attempt to create its own sphere of influence, not only within the area of East Asia, but also within the area of the Indian Ocean as well, pretty much spanning all of its sides. For this to be able to be conducted successfully, the Chinese need to ensure that while, of course, they will be a destabilizing factor in the area, that it doesn't turn into full-out conflict unless if it's completely necessary or unless if the Chinese require it. This current situation right now on the Korean Peninsula is starting to spiral rapidly out of hand, even for the Chinese. And the Chinese are starting to note that as this goes on, it clearly shows that things are going to be digressing, at least on the Korean Peninsula, maybe even into an all-out war, which is something that the Chinese do not want to see as the satellite state, I guess you could call it, that has been making sure to create a buffer zone in between the United States-led areas of South Korea and Japan, will then be in direct conflict with those forces that is supposed to create a buffer zone with, which largely is against Chinese national security interests and also poses a massive threat to Chinese expansion within the area. So going off of this, we can already see that the Chinese are not at all a big fan of this, and it is showing that this move is incredibly dangerous. We have also been able to hear at the exact same time that there will apparently be an exchange of equipment conducted by the Russian Federation and North Korea, as North Korea expects to receive a long-range nuclear missile technology from Russia in exchange for the supply of artillery shells. And that was according to the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell today. The Chinese have also stated that such cooperation could lead to war within Northeast Asia, which, of course, on top of the other thing of North Korea sending troops to Ukraine, is something that the Chinese are not necessarily a big fan of. Going off of all of this, we're getting a very concerning picture going on at the moment. The North Koreans are finally starting to get involved in world affairs far outside of the area of the Korean Peninsula itself. Of course, North Korea has always had a largely covert force of agents operating around the area of East Asia and sometimes internationally, but they've never had an actual armed force leave North Korea in large form really since Vietnam. And that is something that is wildly, unbelievably concerning, is that this is not just an attempt to try and throw guys into a meat grinder to show a sign of friendship to Russia. The reason why the North Koreans are most likely going to start sending these troops into Ukraine is so that way they can get real-life, practical combat experience for their armed forces, for them to be able to develop further doctrine and offensive strategy off of. You have to remember that North Korea has never been involved in a full-blown conventional war since the end of the Korean War in 1953. That has been an incredibly long time. As a matter of fact, I believe, if my math is correct, that is an entire 71 years since they've even been involved in an actual war. And everything that the North Korean military currently works off of is nothing more than theory. They have never had an actual concept of what a modern war looks like, the kind of challenges it poses, and how in the world their armed forces would have to adapt and overcome these challenges to be viable on a modern battlefield. That is the reason why they're sending these troops to Russia. It's not an expeditionary force to help out a common ally to defeat a common foe. This is more so a prime time opportunity for the North Koreans to get hands-on combat experience, take that combat experience and learn from it, and then develop their own doctrines for the North Korean armed forces, figure out their weak points as well, and then try and refine those weak points and further hone them until they're no longer that severe of a weak point for their armed force, so that way if a war was to unfold on the Korean Peninsula, they would be far better off tactically and strategically than they would have been without having any kind of practical experience. This is what the North Koreans are aiming to do with this, and it is wildly concerning to see that. And not only that, it is incredibly concerning to hear that the Russians are so desperate to keep up a supply of artillery and also really just munitions in general of a wide variety, not just artillery shells, but also unguided MLRS rockets, and even in some cases, some ballistic missiles, that they would provide North Korea with nuclear missile technology. That is incredibly concerning because right now the North Koreans have their own long-range intercontinental ballistic missiles, but they have an incredibly small number of them, and from what we know, their success rate versus their launch rate is quite low. We would believe that around 30% of all launched North Korean ICBMs would be able to make it to their targets. The other two-thirds of them would fail. On the other hand, the Russian Federation is working off of older Soviet technology. And while it is older Soviet technology that they use in their missiles, like the Satan intercontinental ballistic missile, it is nevertheless tried and true and incredibly reliable technology as long as it's upkept well. And that was what was incredibly concerning during the Cold War, is that the Soviet Union and the United States, at least on the level of intercontinental ballistic missiles, was on par technologically. They are now going to be giving that kind of technical information to North Korea, so that way they can develop an even larger and much more efficient, or more so successful, fleet of intercontinental ballistic missiles to not only threaten the United States with, but other allies within the region, including places like Australia, New Zealand, and Japan, as well as Taiwan, the Philippines, and many other countries, and many other United States installations within the area. That is a wild...
Honestly, that does not make sense to me. I'll be perfectly honest. The fact that Russia is willing to trade long-range nuclear weapons, which is one of the most advanced weapons that Russia possesses, for quote-unquote artillery shells, that to me does not line up. I think what we should worry about more here is what is Putin trying to do, because this is not about Kim Jong-un, because Kim Jong-un, he's desperate for things in his own country, just like Putin's desperate as well. Putin has been looking to create a distraction from the Ukraine war for a long time. He's been trying to start things up in various regions, including the Middle East, and now he's making his rounds to Asia, and he's having some success with stirring up the bee's nest here in North Korea. Because if you really think about it, what would be so valuable to Putin that he would trade nuclear weapons in exchange for something? This distraction has the potential to pull the West away from Ukraine, which will give Russia the opportunity to try to take more territory inside of Ukraine, and that might be worth handing over nuclear weapons to North Korea in exchange for the favor of creating a distraction. But for artillery shells, I just don't see it. That would not make sense whatsoever. If Putin would trade nukes for artillery shells, then hell is frozen over. So to me, it's more about a distraction than actually getting the shells.
I would have to say that I would believe that it is something of a distraction, but it is also an attempt to try and secure further Russian munitions and maybe a little bit of extra meat for the meat grinder in the short term as well. But in the long term and in the big picture, this is certainly a distraction by no doubt that the Russian Federation is trying to create in East Asia to draw everyone's attention into this area, not only us, but also the Chinese as well, so that way they can try and further on their objectives with Ukraine. It's absolutely insane to see this. It's almost news out of fantasy. You would have never expected that the North Koreans would directly involve themselves in the war in Ukraine, but here we are. And a lot of people have been wondering, what should the reaction be from the collective West to this North Korean statement that has come out today that they will be getting directly involved in the war in under a month. And a lot of people have been saying that NATO should actually directly join the war in Ukraine, and pretty much turn this into a third world war. Other people are saying that we ought to wait and see what happens, and if things get severe, then revisit this topic and see what we should do then. Others are saying that NATO should stay completely out of the fray and continue to do what we've been doing for really 2 years now, or over 2 years, and others are unsure. But a lot of people have been having many different ideas and many different statements about what we should do in response to the North Korean-Russian escalation that we are currently seeing, that is not only threatening Ukraine, but is also threatening Western security interests within the area of East Asia. Really, not only Western security interests, it is threatening collective security interests within the area of East Asia. Not only ours, but also Chinese interests as well. It looks as though a lot of people are mostly on the same page about this, including the Chinese as well. And Matthew, what are people saying about this, and what are you thinking about it as well, as far as the interesting development that's happening between Russia and North Korea today?
So it looks like on this poll, the audience is pretty much split between two different options. 40% said, let's wait and see if it actually happens, if North Korea is actually going to send the troops or not, or is it simply talk? And 41% said NATO should enter the Ukraine war if they're to do that, and 13% said NATO should stay completely out of the fray. And on this one, I would say that to me, it's not so important that North Korea is willing to send troops to Ukraine. Of course, that is bad because North Korea might send a decent amount of troops in the end. We're not really sure just yet. Right now, we're told it's just an engineering group, but the Pentagon's very worried that it could end up being large contingents of North Korean soldiers that end up getting put into the meat grinder, just like the Russian soldiers, and also bog down Ukraine. That is one fear. But to me, the bigger situation we're going to address here is the nuclear weapons being given to North Korea. But to stay on track with this question, I would say that if it happens, honestly, I'm kind of along the lines of NATO should consider entering the Ukraine war, because at that point, we have multiple countries piling on to Ukraine. We can't let our ally go down like that, because if multiple countries start piling on with no NATO response, that will encourage other countries to do the same thing because they don't have any consequences to fear. So while it may seem extreme, it may be necessary. So I'm kind of with the 42%, but I'll admit I'm kind of on the fence. But Enforcer, what say you?
This is a kind of a decision that I never thought we would actually have to face on this channel, is trying to figure out what in the world should be done by the West in response to North Korean intervention in the war. This is, honestly, Matthew, something I have never considered at all, ever. So my answer is going to be very unpolished because this was a massive development today that was really unexpected, in my opinion. So if we're going off of this just off of me saying that I really did not even expect this to have an idea of how to react, I would say that the West should seriously consider NATO involvement in Ukraine as well. What we are seeing is that the Russians are openly starting to become a destabilizing force, not just for the Western world, but really for the entire collective world. This is something that I cannot overplay. The Chinese are even concerned about what's going on right now in between Russia and North Korea. And this is something that you've got to really consider, is that this isn't just threatening destabilization for the West. This is threatening destabilization for everyone but Russia. And well, really, Russia is already destabilizing as is. That's why they're really pulling everyone down with them. But this is something that cannot be overplayed enough, that I don't think, at this point, the Chinese would be greatly opposed to Western intervention in Ukraine, to the point that they would actually pick up support for the Russians or openly support them. I think at this point, with the move that the Russians and North Koreans have collectively made today, the Chinese are completely out of the picture. That we always have to remember that the de facto mindset of the Chinese government is not the furtherance of communism and the furtherance of anti-American interests. It is the idea of national security interests trumping everything for China. And if anything starts to threaten those national security interests for the Chinese, they will drop everything to make sure that they protect those interests. And right now, the Russians and the North Koreans are both starting to openly threaten Chinese national security interests, and for that reason, further support by the Chinese in this war, even in non-lethal forms, will most likely start to end here incredibly soon, most likely within weeks or a couple of months. So going off of that, we know that we don't really have to worry about a Chinese open reaction to Western involvement at this point. So that kind of a factor is now out of the picture. So now going off of that and having a much more clinical equation that we're looking at of should we enter Ukraine or not, we know that what we would be dealing with is just the Russians. The Russians would not get any long-lasting support from the Chinese. They would get long-lasting support from the North Koreans, and we don't really know what would happen in East Asia if NATO directly got itself involved in the war in Ukraine. We may actually see that the North Koreans use that as an excuse to also start a conventional war on the Korean Peninsula. However that would turn out, we don't know, but they probably would start one. And so going off of that, it most likely would create a third world war, no doubt about it. But we are in a situation at this point where things are being pushed so far that unless if the Russians and the North Koreans collectively give up and back off, we're really having our hands tied here and we really have no other option. So going off of that, I would have to say that I believe that the United States and the collective West should conduct a military intervention within Ukraine to crush Russian and North Korean forces within the region and restore Ukraine's 1991 borders that were ratified by a United Nations convention and are supposed to be respected internationally. I don't believe the Chinese would be against that at this point. And of course, it doesn't really matter what the Chinese really want because the West will do what it needs to do for itself. But considering the possible backlash that would come globally from this move, the Chinese are not going to be against it anymore. They're actually going to consider it probably to be a furtherance of their own national security interests. They may even openly condemn the North Koreans and the Russians and possibly use their economic leverage to try and bring an end to the conflict or at least some sort of a settled resolution to the conflict. And also, it is starting to destabilize our interests in East Asia as well. And considering that they're starting to do that in an attempt to try and win the war in Ukraine, I think that we need to start to put our foot down because the entire house of cards that the West has is now in great peril. And so with that, I hope that does.
You know, one thing though, like you were saying with China not being or not wanting to be involved whatsoever with the situation between Russia and North Korea tells you that this situation is really getting out of hand, like you were saying, because China usually likes to play the fence. Like they'll tell the West, oh, we're not really for that, but at the same time they'll go behind everybody's back and kind of like support it under the table. On this one, China came out blatantly and said this is not going to be good if this keeps going this way. And China, with their quote unquote no limits partnership with Russia, apparently it does have limits because China was willing to put their foot down on this one and say, whoa, hold on a minute. That could literally destabilize, like you're saying, the Enforcer, the entire region if they were to like have a problem in Korea, like a major war breakout. It's insane that China had to step in and say that. That shows you how reckless Russia is getting. For Russia to be willing to arm North Korea, which is a complete madman, probably the worst country in the world that you could possibly offer long-range nuclear missiles to, that is an insane, desperate move by Putin, and I'm honestly shocked that we're hearing that today. I wasn't too shocked that troops went to or getting sent to Ukraine by North Korea, but I was definitely shocked about the nuclear information. That was a huge, huge shocker.
That was a huge shocker, and I also just saw Don C in the chat say, never trust what China says. Now, usually I would say, I don't know. To be quite honest with you, China's public statements are pretty straightforward. You can generally trust what they say on most levels, unless if it's something to do with some form of support to Russia in the war. You can generally take that with a grain of salt whenever they make a statement about that. But usually their statements are very clear and very straightforward and very easy to understand, to be entirely honest. They're pretty transparent about what they do. If you actually read a lot about what they say in the People's Congresses during the plenums, they actually say a lot. And you can really easily get an idea of what China is doing and where they're planning on going on into the future. But moving on from that and talking about the Chinese statements today, the Chinese are starting to show that they're not a big fan of this. And here's how I would gameplay this entire situation that we're looking at right now if I was the president of the United States. One, I would make sure, like I've said in the past, because of course this is all getting tied into the Ukraine war at this point, so Ukraine is going to be a part of this picture. I would make sure to send a confidential statement by the Department of State from the United States to Ukraine saying, do not have any statements or any talks with the Chinese. Do not openly support them. Do not condemn them. Do not seek to have any kind of interactions, either positive or negative, with the Chinese. And I would leave that at that. And I would still threaten to withdraw support from Ukraine if they ever breached that statement. Then I would go to China, because now the ballpark actually is in America's court completely. And considering that the United States and China, the two largest economic and military powers in the world currently, are in agreement that the situation going on in between Russia and North Korea is extremely dangerous and not only destabilizing in Eastern Europe, but destabilizing worldwide, even within the area of East Asia, the United States can then step forward and start to negotiate on collective terms. We can create a united front against the Russian Federation and North Korea on this one issue. We can then say, China, the situation that we're currently looking at is extremely dangerous and extremely destabilizing, not only for United States and Western interests, but also for Chinese interests as well, and threatens the status quo within the area. Something needs to be immediately done to stop this, and we recommend, and we suggest and request of the People's Republic of China that you immediately stop all imports of any civilian or military products from the People's Republic of China into North Korea, and we also request that you start to put heavy diplomatic pressure on the Russians to reach a diplomatic resolution to the conflict in Ukraine. And of course, we will do the same thing for the Ukrainians. This may actually bring a positive outcome to the war because the Chinese are not going to be big fans of reaching a peace deal that will end up benefiting the Russians at this point. At this point, the Russians are threatening Chinese national security. The Chinese believe the Russians are dead to them. That is how it will work in the Chinese mindset of how they operate their country. So they will go, whatever the West wants, you will give them, and you will shut up and you will like it. And maybe the Russians will get the Donbass in a negotiated resolution out of the conflict, if anything, but the reality is that the Chinese probably wouldn't even support that at all either. They would most likely be seeking to either punish the Russian Federation and may also leverage their claim on one of the islands that they say is theirs in the Amur River to make sure to push the Russians to a point that they have absolutely no allies except for North Korea. And considering that the Chinese have heavily supported North Korea in the past over many decades, really ever since the creation of the North Korean state, we would also understand that the Chinese have a major leverage over the North Koreans to make them stop any of these actions that they're currently conducting, and may even threaten direct action against them in some form to once again ensure Chinese national security and Chinese national interests are best looked after in the area. That's the way I believe that this could be gone about, and I would very rarely ever suggest a united front by China and the United States against any kind of a situation. But this is one situation that we can clearly see the Chinese are so off board with that they're openly condemning it from the start. So going off of that, I would have to say that that would be the best way to approach this situation at the moment. Hopefully the Department of State and the Office of the President of the United States will look into this matter in that approach and attempt to create at least a small united front with the Chinese on this matter, because it is an incredibly dangerous situation we're dealing with, and the Chinese are also realizing that as well. But we still
even though China is like verbally saying that they don't like what's happening, and they probably don't like what's happening, I think if it came down to it, China would ultimately side with the Russians and also the new Axis powers eventually. I don't think they would depart from the Axis powers simply because they don't like what's happening there. Their loyalties do lie over there in that sphere, and it will always lie over there. And that China knows that if it comes down between the United States or them, they're going to separate. They're not going to go our way. But is that what you're saying, Enforce? Do you think that China will go our way, or you think they'll stay in their own region with the Axis powers?
It's not really. I don't look at it that way, where it's a us versus them kind of a thing, because for this axis of power, it's not really an axis of evil. It's more so just a whole bunch of poor people getting together and wanting to fight everyone. And the Chinese aren't going to hop into a sphere with a bunch of poor people. I mean, they're the second wealthiest country on earth by GDP, so they're the ones who kind of get to set the tempo in the area. It's not China joining them. It's more so them having to submit to China's will, especially the Russians, because we already know by Putin's own statements in the Tucker Carlson interview that the Russian Federation is heavily economically tied at this point to the Chinese, and the renminbi actually holds a lot of weight within the Russian economy, meaning that a Chinese withdrawal from the Russian economic sphere could lead to a complete collapse, meaning that the Chinese have a great leverage over the Russians. So it's not really a difference where the Chinese go, well, we kind of have to go with the flow. China can set the flow in this area, and they can also do the same thing with North Korea. So if they believe that something is against their national security interest to this extreme where they would openly condemn it within the first hour of the statement being made, I believe that they probably will be able to really use a good bit of elbow grease to really bring the situation to an end, because the Chinese are not against creating a united front on specific topics that they find to be incredibly important to them and the U.S. That's what they've done in the past. They created a united front with the United States that was ideologically completely opposite with them in the 1970s to combat the Soviet Union. And they will do something like that again today if they find this to be that serious of a national security threat. Because
But ultimately though, but the real question is ultimately if North Korea and Russia kind of forced their hand a bit and they went ahead and did this against China's will and started a war on the Korean Peninsula and escalation started running rampant. Obviously, a war is the most significant escalation you could have. Do you think China would remain within that sphere, or would they depart from it and sort of go toward the Western direction?
They would not. Well, you're giving me like a binary equation here I can't work with because that's not how it would work. China is building their own sphere currently and has one. And so while the Russians and the North Koreans can do whatever they want, that doesn't mean that they now have to go the Western way. They can stay the Chinese path however long they want to. They're in an economic position to be able to do that. So they would, of course, divorce the Russians and the North Koreans from any attempt of ever being in their sphere at this point, but they wouldn't join the West either, because they are a completely separate sphere. The Russians and the North Koreans would pretty much just lose their major financial backer if they would have ever had one at this point.
Interesting. Me personally, I would still have to disagree. I think there are two separate spheres forming here. We've been seeing that over I would say, the course of about a decade or so. We have, once again, like during World War II, half the world's going one direction and half the world's going the other direction. And I see it democracy versus authoritarianism. That's the way I see it, a divergent between the nations that have those different governments. And I think it's happening that way again. I think I see China, North Korea, Russia, Iran, and other countries like that going one way, and the United States and all the NATO nations going a different way. So me personally, I see it as a binary thing, but I see you see it multiple different ways. You think there's multiple different spheres and not just two.
Yes, and that's something that existed way back in the day during the Cold War. The Chinese were never, and this is something that's actually really interesting. A lot of people always thought that the communist Chinese were a part of the Soviet Union sphere, but the reality is that they never were, and they were actually generally at qualms with each other during the entirety of the Cold War, and that's why the Chinese in the mid-70s ended up joining the United States in pretty much a massive economic and slightly military alliance in a way against the Soviet Union, is because while they were both communist and authoritarian countries, Chinese and Russian authoritarianism didn't really blend well or mix well at all. And so they ended up actually siding with the United States, which is ideologically completely opposite of the China that existed at that time, which was strictly Marxist, Leninist, and Maoist. And they ended up joining us. And I think that that's something. Well, it joined us at least in a limited form, but continued to pursue their own interests. They didn't become a member of the West, per se. It was just more so of an economic and military thing to help them out in the big picture long run. But the Chinese will do that again today if they need to. They have done that in the past. I mean, they've done that already, like I'm saying right now. And so they're not going to, just all of a sudden just go, oh, you know what, we've got to go with the Russians. Although they're poor, they're broke, and they're lame, and they're pitiful, and their leader looks kind of like a bald loser. We're going to team up with them. There's there's no reason for them to team up with the Russians because the Russians don't have anything going for them anymore, and the North Koreans don't either. The Chinese are the ones who can walk away from them, and the Russians and the North Koreans will be the ones begging for them to come back and would be the ones having to do anything to try and make sure that they stay within China's good graces.
But if China goes off on their own sphere, like you're saying that they're in right now, and they remain that way, and they divorce from Russia and the other countries as well, then wouldn't that really hamper China's ambition to take Taiwan? Because China would not want to be left alone, like on a lonely island, if they decided to do that. They would want allies. And outside of divorcing themselves from the other countries like Russia, they're kind of left alone, aren't they?
Kind of, sort of, but they were kind of going to be left alone already because the Russians and the North Koreans were never going to provide military support for an invasion of Taiwan. Neither country has ever showed interest in pursuing that or helping the Chinese with that. That is purely a Chinese aim, and the Chinese also deliberately make it a non-international move, to try and militarily retake Taiwan or have military allies to do that, because they view China on a diplomatic level views the China-Taiwan situation as an internal domestic affair, and involving foreign countries militarily in that would start to delegitimize their claim that it's an internal domestic affair inside of China. with Taiwan being a rebellious province inside of the People's Republic of China. So for a diplomatic level, they never had military allies in the first place, and they never really would need any either for the most part, because in the past they've largely already gamed the South that they would be on their own pursuing Taiwan.
Interesting perspective. I see where you're coming from. Me personally, I think I'm going to stick to my guns on it, but I do see where you're coming from.
And so with that, because I've been trying to get us moving on, because we covered 3 news bulletins. It's 30 minutes later. I'm like, dang man, we got to keep rolling because we still got a lot of news in North Korea, and we haven't even moved into Israel or South America yet, and we still have a load of Ukraine war news to go. But let us know what y'all are thinking about that in the live chat. Do y'all agree with Enforcer Matt's idea, or do you agree with my idea? It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's all just opinions, but I'd still like to know what y'all are thinking about that, because it is certainly something that is up in the air, and you can have many different ideas and many different opinions about it. But with that, we're now going to be moving back into North Korea, where we also got to hear that according to the North Korean state media today, which was then reported by the Yonhap news agency in South Korea, that North Korea has successfully conducted a test aimed at securing multiple warhead missile capability. What that means is that they've been able to find a way to produce a MIRV, which is a multiple independently targetable reentry vehicle. These are a very specific thing to advanced countries that have been able to produce some of the most dangerous nuclear weapons in the world. And this is actually the warhead of a Peacekeeper multiple independently launched reentry vehicle system. Each one of these little cones is a nuclear warhead, and each one of them is fired in a single missile. So you see all of these warheads here. They are attached to one missile. They are launched up into space. The warhead then tilts downwards, and it starts shooting off these independent warheads at completely separate targets. That means that one missile can hit, say, 9 independent targets, 9 different cities with a single missile. It is an extremely potent and extremely deadly capability for a nation to be in possession of. And the North Koreans are now saying that they were able to conduct successful tests of that today, and paired with Russian nuclear technology, nuclear long-range intercontinental ballistic missile technology, they will now have a fully capable intercontinental ballistic missile that is multiple warhead capable, that is extremely dangerous for the North Koreans to be in possession of. And not only that, at the exact same time, we also got news from the area of Wonsan that the North Koreans conducted a failed hypersonic missile test today. According to the publication sources, the North Koreans launched a missile at 5:30 in the morning local time into the direction of the East Sea, and the test was unsuccessful, and the missile sank after flying about 250 kilometers into the area of the East Sea. This is something that is once again showing us the North Koreans are not trying to develop their ground forces per se a great deal. They are more so trying to develop their strategic deterrence a great deal. So that way, if they go to war with South Korea, it is a dangerous situation that if the West gets involved in, there could be possible nuclear repercussions if we did. Also, we were able to get additional news that the South Koreans are apparently already starting to ramp up their own diplomatic escalations against the North Koreans, as for the first time in an incredibly long time, I believe over the span of 7 years, if I'm correct, and I am correct, South Korea's Marine Corps has resumed full-scale live-fire drills on islands near the inter-Korean maritime border for the first time in that 7-year period. And that maritime border is right here. And so that is once again a major escalation, as we actually saw that the North and South Koreans almost went to blows over the islands in a non-military form just about 6 to 8 months ago. And now the South Koreans are once again using them for military purposes. All of this is incredibly concerning, and once again showing us that the situation on the Korean Peninsula is continuing to degrade rapidly. But many people have been wondering if this long-range nuclear technology that Putin is giving the North Koreans at this point, is that going to create a major nuclear crisis, similar to the Cuban Missile Crisis, but on a much larger and a much more dangerous scale? And a lot of people are believing that it is, and some people are believing that it might be. But Matthew, what are people really saying about that? Are they saying that this is truly a major crisis? And also, what are you thinking about it as well?
So it looks like the majority of people, about 66%, said yes, this is a very serious crisis, while 21% said kind of somewhat, but will it actually happen? And 6% said no, North Korea won't be reckless with a nuke. And on this one, on the last option there, North Korea won't be reckless. North Korea's entire existence is reckless, so I would not rule out the possibility of them being absolutely crazy with nukes or any other weapon for that matter. But on this one, I would have to be with the majority. This is a very serious crisis. If Russia is not bluffing and they actually send long-range nuclear technology to North Korea, that's going to create many problems. Like the Enforcer was saying just a moment ago, if there's a war that breaks out on the Korean Peninsula, then the U.S. has to contend with a power which has the ability to strike the United States with nuclear weapons, which greatly changes the equation. And that may inhibit us from getting involved in Korea, or it may at least cause some apprehension. Also, even if there is not a war that breaks out in Korea, now North Korea, which is a rogue state, which acts very recklessly all the time, has weapons that can kill a lot of civilians at once and even reach us in the United States, like I was saying. So either way you go, it's a bad crisis, and this should be stopped, in my opinion, at all costs. North Korea cannot get this technology, and whatever needs to be done to stop it needs to be done. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to completely agree with that. This is one of the most dangerous situations seen in the modern world. We need to make sure to treat this quite seriously and do anything possible to stop it, even if it does involve creating a united front, at least in a temporary form, with the Chinese to bring pressure down on the Russians and North Koreans to stop this from going forward. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, at least in my opinion. And now we are finally going to be moving on from North Korea, which has dominated the entire first segment of the stream. And hopefully all of the other segments don't do that, because we might be here for 4 hours just covering news. But moving on from that into the Middle East, we have been able to hear that military developments are still ongoing within the area, and it does seem as though that the Israeli Defense Forces are continuing to move more and more equipment into the area of the border of southern Lebanon. According to information that we currently have, engineering units have already moved towards the border several days ago. About 48 hours ago, those engineering units were spotted already moving into the area directly along the border region. We do understand that those units would be some of the first to arrive, usually in offensive planning. Those kinds of units are the first to show up, so that way the main bulk of an offensive force isn't in peril of possibly being attacked while they're waiting for the engineering units to move forward. And so now we are seeing, as of today, that actual combat units of the Israeli Defense Forces are beginning to advance and move on into the direction of the border. We were able to see several M113 command vehicles, also called the M5, I believe the M577, and we were also able to see a couple of M109 Paladins as well. This would show that this is most likely the HQ section of an artillery brigade that is beginning to move into the area. Or it may be the HQ section of an artillery battalion attached to a mechanized division or a mechanized brigade of the Israeli Armed Forces. We can also see a large amount of M113s here as well. These are the M11A3 model. Once again, showing us that this may be a mechanized unit, more so than an artillery unit. Also, sick Jeep. Meep, meep. But anyways.
Yeah, I pointed that out earlier. It's literally like a civilian Jeep, a pretty like tricked out one out there, just sitting around with the military equipment. It's pretty cool.
Man, just driving by, you got all these M113s, and you just got cruising down the street in my 6.4. It's like, what the hell? It's like, that's not a military vehicle. But anyways, beyond that, it does appear that the situation is getting incredibly tense within this region as well, and it does look like the Israeli Defense Forces are poised to invade Lebanon within a close proximity to right now. We can't say when. People on Twitter are always putting out time frames like they know exactly when an offensive will begin. We never know. Currently, we do know that the Israelis are already conducting the advance phase of an offensive, meaning that they are starting to move their forces into position to conduct an offensive into Lebanon. But when that will actually kick off and the invasion will begin, we do not know. We will most likely be seeing that an invasion begins within days or weeks at this point, but I'm not going to give an exact time frame, as those will almost always end up being completely wrong. We were also able to hear a statement from the United States Department of Defense today that the United States is preparing to evacuate United States citizens from the area of Lebanon, and that statement was made by John Kirby. And this is once again giving us a very clear indication that apparently the United States, much like many other countries in the Western world, have been notified that a ground invasion of Lebanon is imminent, and they are already preparing evacuations of their citizens from possible war zones that will begin to pop up within Lebanon. From what we understand, the Israeli Defense Forces will most likely keep the conflict contained, at least for a small while, into the area directly in the south of Lebanon. Unfortunately, I forgot the name of the river, and let me see if I can get the name of the river right here. It is the Litani River. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. But from what we understand, they are most likely going to be advancing onto the area south of the Litani River and remaining there. However, Hezbollah forces will be expected to start moving further north in the country as the Israeli offensive begins to move towards the banks of the Litani River, and so we will probably see the Israeli defense forces will begin to extend deeper and deeper into Lebanon and most likely extend far north of the area of the Litani River. We do not know the current kinds of consequences that will come from this conflict that will be unfolding within the region, but it is starting to appear very imminent, and we do know that a ground invasion will be coming here within the very near future. Moving on from that area and on into our next bit of news, down in Bolivia, we have probably seen the most comically and poorly conducted military coup in the history of South America. I'm not kidding. At least in modern history over the past 24 years, this is probably the best one we've ever seen. According to information that we have, a military coup was conducted inside of the capital of Bolivia, La Paz, today, by the Bolivian army forces. According to the information that we were able to get, it seems as though that the president's office inside of Bolivia started to hear that there were some irregular military movements around the area. We then saw that the police were immediately deployed into the streets, and we were able to get a clip of the police on the move right here. We understand that the police were a part of the pro-government faction and were not aligned with the armed forces. Meanwhile, we then got to see that apparently, according to additional information and video that we were able to get, the armed forces, or specifically the Bolivian army, began to move into the area of the presidential palace and started to use an armored car to attempt to batter down the front gates and make their way into the presidential palace. And we were able to get video footage of that on Bolivian news channels in this clip. Well, you see the armored car here, backing up and getting ready to ram the doors again. And we see it ramming the door again.
Man, that's laughable. I mean, I know it's a coup, but still, like, they're ramming the doors of the trucks. Like, y'all don't have a battering ram or something?
Man, they had nothing. They just started hitting it with an armored car, and they couldn't even hit the doors straight on either. And so, from what we know, the general that was conducting this coup was actually, from what we know, the top general in the Bolivian armed forces. I'm about to call it the Bolivian armed forces, like Peru and Bolivia mixed together. But the general's name was Juan Jose Zuniga. And apparently, according to his information, he said that we will take our homeland. Our country can't continue like this. And I also have to say that it appears that the guy from the movie Up has apparently found a new job. Instead of traveling around South America in a house carried by balloons, and it now appears that he's been able to become the general of the armed forces of Bolivia. Then we were able to get additional news that after they busted down the doors of the presidential palace, the army and the general entered. Apparently, the president just refused to step down, and the coup pretty much ended right then and there. We were not able to get a really good picture at this moment of what actually happened in between them busting down the doors of the presidential palace and this next clip. But after the general and some members of the armed forces entered the presidential palace, we then saw them just leave, and they did not overthrow the government. It was a complete failure. This is the general that I was just talking about, Juan Jose, getting into the armored car that literally just busted down the doors of the presidential palace, and he's hopping in there just leaving. So there they go.
Man, that was like a uneventful end to that coup.
Completely uneventful. We see them trying to hand something off to the general after he got in the armored car.
Bro just drove off like he ate lunch and is leaving for the day.
Yeah, it's just a normal day out at lunch. And a lot of people would be thinking, okay, so I guess this guy has fled the country now that the coup has failed. No, he didn't flee the country. No, he actually stayed around and then decided to return back into the area of the capital and give a press release about why he tried to conduct the coup. And in the middle of the press release, he got arrested by the Bolivian police. Like, it was all on film. There he is. There is Juan Jose, after failing a coup attempt, back in the capital, conducting a press release, and here comes the Bolivian police in the background to arrest the guy, and they're going to plant his face in the dirt in a minute on film. So here's the clip.
De exhcange. ¿Ya? Exhcange.
So here comes the police, and they're now arresting him. It devolves into a riot. We now see them throwing him into the back of a police car, and that was the end of the clip. So the man conducted a coup, failed the coup, and then showed up for a press release and got arrested all in the same day. Like, it had hardly just turned nighttime in Bolivia, and he had been arrested. The coup was one of the worst ones we've ever seen. It wasn't even conducted with any real, like, fervor to it. It was the weakest coup attempt we've ever seen, and this general has already been replaced, and things are going on as normal in Bolivia after this. But that
guy was not going to let anything get in the way of that after-action report. He was going out in the middle of the crowd. He was like, it's like, there's people looking for you now. It's like you just literally tried to overthrow the government. He comes out there like, oh, hey, guys, I'm the hero of the hour. It's like, no, you're not, buddy. You just tried to take the government over, and now you're getting arrested.
Dude, he came out like he was doing a YouTuber apology video, dude. He was like, this cannot wait. We must put one out now. And then he came out and he's like, so I got to tell y'all why I did it. I got to put out my manifesto. And then the guys came up to arrest him, man. He was like, what's all the charges? Overthrowing the government? A succulent Bolivian government? It's like, what the hell is this? It was chaos. That's the best thing that we can explain. But that was a small story, an entertaining story from South America. And it put South America in the news circuit for the day. And I got to say, fun on Bolivia. I mean, no one, from what we understand, at least according to my information that we've been able to get on this channel, was even injured in this coup. It was a completely bloodless coup. No one even got hurt. And it was absolute entertainment for everyone in Bolivia and everyone around the world today to watch this coup unfold in such a miserable way and then end on the most disappointing note ever. The guy just gets arrested and he gets replaced immediately. But moving on from the Bolivian news, we were also able to hear some really interesting word that apparently the United States has been able to have a phone call with the brand new Russian defense minister. And a lot of people are wondering what that phone call could have been about. And some people are saying that it's just normal communications, meant to keep up at least some sort of dialogue with the Russian Federation, because although we are on very unfriendly terms with them, we are, of course, making sure to at least keep a line of communication open. Others are saying that the United States is secretly trying to negotiate into the war, while others are unsure, and some people, a very small amount, have said that the United States is quietly betraying Ukraine, although we're still giving them money. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so 35%, the popular option, said it's just normal communications, while 30% said the U.S. is secretly negotiating peace, and it looks like only 9% said the U.S. is quietly betraying Ukraine. And the only one that I would rule out for certain is the quietly betraying Ukraine part, where I don't think we're betraying Ukraine in any way. Communicating with the Russian defense minister and even communicating with enemies in general is actually normal practice for the United States. They always try to keep an open line of communication. Now, obviously, we would love to know what they're talking about, but they're not going to come out and say that. So if I had to take a stab at it, I would say that's probably the U.S. trying to negotiate peace quietly in the background and at least get a feel for the where the Russians are actually at in the war. And they probably relay that information to Ukraine on the Russians' behalf. That is my assumption, and I really doubt they're going to make any progress with that, but that's probably what they're doing. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, this is a completely normal practice. This is something that will be shocking to many, but we actually kept up a fairly consistent line of communication with Nazi Germany during World War II. And during some moments, we actually tried to get them to conduct a coup against Hitler directly for the U.S. government. There were multiple times, due to this open dialogue that was always had, at least on some level, on a minimal level during World War II, in between America and Nazi Germany, we actually asked Himmler, I think 3 separate times over the course of the war, to overthrow Hitler. Like, I'm not kidding. 3 separate times it was documented, and declassified documents show that Himmler actually considered it seriously at least twice, which is really wild to think about. But nevertheless, keeping up a line of communication, even with adversaries or nations that you're actively at war with, is actually a pretty normal practice. So I would have to completely rule out that the United States is quietly betraying Ukraine. How in the world will we be doing that when we're giving them tens of billions of dollars? We don't give money to someone we're planning on betraying. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. And also, we may be secretly negotiating for peace. I'm not going to rule that out because the United States may be looking for possibly ending the conflict, considering that things are getting out of hand. We may be seeing that it's getting a little bit too hot in the kitchen, and then we're deciding to just jump ship altogether and find a way to create a peace resolution before the beginning of next year. But we're not entirely sure. I would say, though, it's just a normal dialogue that's going on, and it's nothing to look into too deeply or too far. But with that, I hope that does
Oh,
address.
and also, real quick, I saw a question in the live chat from You're Taking My Life. They said, who was it that was flying over to the U.S. from Russia today? And that is true. There was indeed a Russian special flight squadron on their way to New York today. We were not told who was on the plane. All we know is the plane was an Ilyushin 96, which is one of Russia's passenger jets. But we don't know anything else rather than that. They came from Moscow and it was going to JFK. So anybody could have been on the flight. We just simply don't know. It could have been the top level people or maybe just some intermediate level people. But they have landed because that was reported at 7 o'clock this morning. And obviously, it doesn't take that long to get all the way across over here. So they're in New York. We just don't know who's on it.
I would have to assume that it was most likely a diplomatic team going to the United Nations, considering that the UN headquarters is in New York City. If they were attempting to speak to the United States government, they most likely would have arrived at Andrews Air Force Base in Washington, D.C., which they did not. So going off of that, I would have to assume that they're most likely a diplomatic delegation that is heading towards the United Nations to do something there, or at least lodge some sort of an official statement. But I wouldn't really know for sure. We'll probably get more information from the United States Department of State in a couple of days about what's going on with this Russian envoy that has arrived in America. But nevertheless, it being on an Ilyushin 96, we do clearly know that this is a diplomatic team that is arriving, as they are usually provided, like last year when a diplomatic team arrived, an Ilyushin 96. It's just the general transport plane for Russian diplomatic teams. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least based off of our limited knowledge of what that could be, most likely diplomatic in nature. But moving on from that and on into the rest of our news, it is now time for us to finally move on over into the land of Ukraine. Because it is breaking Ukraine war news that we're supposed to be covering, like the title suggests, but there was so much going on in every other corner of the world that we had to cover first. And this is one of the few times, actually, crazily enough, y'all, in channel history, that we really have pretty much moved on from being a Ukraine war news channel centrally for a night on the live stream and have almost turned into world news, because we have covered literally every single corner of the globe tonight, and now we're finally getting on to Ukraine. But I gotta say, I thank everyone so much already. We still got a lot to go. There's loads of news that we had from inside of Ukraine today, but I thank everyone so much for watching so far tonight. It's been crazy to think that we've been able to tell all of y'all about so many major and breaking news developments that happened today, and I hope that y'all have enjoyed it so far. And if y'all did, make sure to hit the like button. And also, if you really enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe, because we do this pretty much every single day. Usually it's mostly Ukraine war news that we cover on a daily basis, because it's one of the biggest things happening in the world every single day. But when there's really big things happening in other areas of the world, like the Middle East, East Asia, South America, and even North America on a fairly rare occurrence, we do make sure to throw that in and cover it as well. But with that, it is now time for us to move on into the area of Ukraine, and we have an insanely large amount of news to cover inside of Ukraine itself. Exorbitant load. But before we get into that, I do understand that we have some questions, Matthew. A lot of questions that have been thrown in. And what kind of questions do we have tonight, Matthew?
All right, and we have been questioned. Our first one goes to Charles Hazlitt, who puts in a $50 donation. Very generous support and the largest super chat of the night. Huge shout out to Charles for that support, and it's, of course, very much appreciated. And sadly, no comment left with it. But it is a nice big support, and we appreciate it very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, a huge shout out to Charles Hazlitt. That support is massively appreciated, Charles. You help this channel to keep on running day in and day out, and to be able to cover not only Ukraine war news, but world news as well, and what's going on really around the entirety of the globe. If it wasn't for folks like you who help to support this channel and make it possible, we wouldn't be able to be here live on air right now. We run this channel 6 days a week on live stream form. We have very rarely, if ever, missed a day of running this live stream for 854 days. And it's thanks to folks like you who support this channel that we're able to do that. Out of all of the people who have watched this channel in an hour and 13 minutes, which is 40,000 people on this live stream so far, only a handful of them support this channel in Super Chats. And I believe, if I'm looking at this number correctly tonight, there's only been about 15 Super Chats so far. 15 people have decided to support this channel out of 40,000 people who have watched the stream. And that is the way it is supposed to run. This stream is an ad-free, sponsor-free stream. It is completely free news for everyone to watch and enjoy. But nevertheless, we do this as a job. And the people who support this channel are massively appreciated, not just by us, but the tens of thousands of people who are watching the stream right now, who get to get the news absolutely free without even having to give up 15 seconds of their time to watch a skippable ad or to watch a sponsorship, thanks to folks like you, Charles. And that's why we give such a massive shout out of appreciation and thanks to every single one of our super chatters, because y'all help this world on this channel to keep turning around and go into an orbit each and every day. And I got to thank you massively for that support, Charles. While you didn't throw in a comment, your impact on helping this channel to keep on covering its news is felt massively by millions every month, and we thank you so much once again for enjoying this channel enough to support it and help it to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, real quick question for the audience. Is my mic overly loud tonight? If it is, let me know, and I can try to bump the gain down just a little bit. I've been seeing reports of some people saying it's fine, some people saying it's too loud. So if it is, let me know. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat, we have a $25 donation from another channel legend. This time, Zypersniper1, and huge shout out to Zypersniper for that support. He says, Poland and the Baltics said if Ukraine got pushed back hard, that the Polish and the Baltics troops would join Ukraine, or am I wrong?
Yes, you are correct, Sniper. There was a Baltic-Polish alliance that was made where they threatened the Russian Federation that if the war in Ukraine continued to go poorly, they would get directly involved in military intervention of their own. And we have also heard a similar but completely separate offer from the French as well on that topic. And they have said that if the Ukrainians started to sustain massive losses on the battlefield in their nation, that the French would directly intervene militarily in the conflict. And that is something that I think we really have to cover, because I saw someone bring up a question like this and I answered it at the beginning of the stream, and then Matthew and me were kind of a little bit set aback by the question. It wasn't a deeply offensive question, but it was one that I found a little bit annoying, is that, and also, no offense if the question was innocently meant. It's just that we find it annoying because some people try to come in and like put on the nerd glass. You go, excuse me, are you really in the war? You haven't declared war? In the modern day, and also to bring up the question so that way I say it clearly so that way everyone can hear it. Someone asked about North Korea. So, North Korea, did they officially declare war on Ukraine today, or are they just sending troops, acting like there's a differentiation in between the two? In a modern day, in a modern world, no country ever declares war anymore. You will never see that a legislative body comes together in any nation and openly declares war. It will never happen. The world has moved beyond official declarations of war, because if you were to go through the motions of doing that, you lose an element of surprise that is extremely important in the modern war-fighting sense. So you'll never see an official declaration of war. The Russian Federation, actually, to further that point, has never officially declared war on Ukraine. They have never gone through a legislative action to officially declare a state of war. That's why in Russia, it's called a special military operation. It's not called the Ukraine War. But nevertheless, the Russians are clearly in a war with the Ukraine, and it is a war, whether they declare it or not. The Polish and the Baltics, moving on from that, saying that they would get directly involved in the war in Ukraine, that doesn't mean that they are in this limbo land where they aren't in a state of war if they got directly involved and sent their troops into Ukraine. If they send soldiers into Ukraine and those soldiers are actively involved in frontline fighting, they have joined the war by all effect and are belligerent members on the side of Ukraine, much like France would, much like North Korea will be when their soldiers finally arrive in Ukraine within the occupied region of Donetsk. They will be an official member of the war in Ukraine and an active belligerent on the side of the Russian Federation. That is something that I have to make incredibly clear, because there seems to be a bit of what I find to be a really goofy word game that people try to play nowadays, where they go, excuse me, actually it's not a war because they didn't declare war. And they completely are blind to the fact that no one has ever declared war beyond World War II. Like, no one has. It's been very rare. It's been insanely rare, but no one does it anymore. Let me just go through a couple of instances where a war hasn't been declared, but wars happen. the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the United States invasion of Grenada, the United States military intervention in Panama, the United States military intervention in former Yugoslavia inside the Balkans, the United States military intervention against ISIS in the mid-2010s, the United States military intervention in Lebanon, the United States military intervention against the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, also called the Gulf War. Let's see, what other conflicts? Let's see, the United Kingdom inside of Malaya. They called it the Malayan emergency because they didn't want to call it a war. They never officially declared war against the uprising inside of Malaysia. There was also several conflicts and back and forths that have occurred in between India and Pakistan, which were called wars, where neither side officially declared war. Let's see, let me think of another one. When the Chinese invaded and took over Tibet back in the late 50s, they never declared war, they just annexed them, and that was that. Let's see here, let me think of another one. What else could I think of, Matthew? What is another war where a war has not been officially declared, but a war happened?
Did you say the Middle East?
Yeah, I brought up a lot of the ones in the Middle East. I'm trying to think of another one. Oh yeah, the war that's currently going on right now between Iran and Israel. That entire thing is a proxy war. Neither side has officially declared war on the other, but nevertheless, they go to blows like we saw a little while ago. There is no such thing anymore as an official declaration of war. So you have to look for the essence of war, and that's where you'll find that war exists. So instead of looking for an official declaration of war, you look for warlike actions. Like with North Korea saying that they're going to be sending troops into Ukraine, that is clearly a warlike action, meaning that they're joining the war. You don't have to have an official declaration of war anymore for someone to be in a war. They can just get in one, and that is when a war begins. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can and answer that question fairly well. And while it was more so of a rabbit hole working off of your question, Zyper Sniper 1, I feel like it answers something that a lot of people seem to forget these days about wars, is that they're never officially declared anymore. They just pop up and happen. And also, Larry Hirschman brought up another good one, the Falklands War. It's called a war. Neither side officially declared war on each other. Argentina just annexed the Falkland Islands. The British came back and retook it. Neither side declared war. The Argentine government just collapsed after the conflict was over. It's just a thing of the modern world. You'll never have an official declaration of war anymore. So if you were trying to be someone who sounds like an intellectual, and you say something, like if you say something to me, I'm going to be entirely honest with how I take this. If you say something, you're wrong, North Korea isn't in the war in Ukraine because you haven't officially declared war. Excuse you. I will look at you as very, very ignorant because that just doesn't happen anymore. Historically, it hasn't happened for like 70 years. It hasn't happened since World War II. So if you say something like that, like it's a requirement for a war to begin, I will not look at you favorably. I rarely ever say statements like that, but that is one thing that will let me know that someone doesn't really know a lot about what they're talking about, is when they're looking for an official declaration of war in the modern era. It just will not happen. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, but still, thank you so much for the support, Zyper Sniper 1, and I hope that did address your actual question about whether the Poland and the Baltics actually did bring that up, and they have, and from what we understand, that's still completely on the table. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Zyper Sniper, we wouldn't be able to answer very good questions like that, because that is a very good question to jog everyone's memory of the kind of military alliances that have already been formed inside of NATO that may go in and intervene militarily inside of Ukraine and join the war. And so with that, thank you greatly once again for support, Zyper Sniper, and being an old guard and a channel legend. And with that, we are on to the final question in this segment, and then we're going to be moving into the actual Ukraine war news.
All right, and the last one is going to go to Jack Ray, who put in a $25 donation, and huge shout out to Jack, as always, for that support. He said, it's like the old days, 2,000 years ago, when I was like, oh yeah, we're attacking you now, shrug.
Yeah, it kind of is like that. I think that's a pretty good way to explain that. It just kind of is like, yeah, the war is happening. The best way that I can explain it, you know something interesting, Matthew, it just hit me. The World War II for America was the same thing that the Korean War was, because the war started without Japan officially declaring war. Because, you know, they attacked the United States in the Philippines, and also, I believe, let me think, it was in the Philippines, and it was also somewhere else. It was not Guam, I don't believe. No, it was Guam. It was Guam. They attacked the United States at the Philippines and Guam, and they also attacked the United States at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii on December 7th of 1941. And then it was, I believe, a day later, or 12 to 16 hours later, that we got the statement from the Japanese that they were going to war with America. So even then, the Japanese did not officially declare a war on the United States until after they had gone to war, and then they told us that they were going to war, after they had clearly already gone to war with us. That is, World War II is a great example of that, at least for the United States, because we didn't get any heads-up notice that the Japanese were going to be going to war with us and attacking Pearl Harbor, the Philippines, and Guam, until they did it. And then 12 to 16 hours later, they finally told us, oh, by the way, we're going to war with y'all. And so World War II, at least for the United States, started the exact same way. And I also think, if I'm remembering right, Operation Barbarossa, where the Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union, also happened the exact same way. They started to invade the Soviet Union first, and then they told them that they were going to war. And I'm seeing some people saying Hitler declared war on the United States, but that was 3 days after December 7th. They declared war on America on the 9th of December. Meaning that, yeah, they declared war, but the war had already begun effectively at that point for America. So it was still a late declaration of war and really didn't matter at that point because the war was already going on. But I would have to completely agree with you. Modern wars just are not fought in this kind of a bureaucratic way that a lot of people think it would be fought. Like where people come together and go, I don't like these people, let's go to war with them, and then you go to war with them. That's just not how it works anymore. You start a war, and then maybe you'll give them the gratuity of telling them you're at war with them, or you just never will, and a state of war will go on. So I hope that that does address that well, but that is a great point, Jack Ray, and I got to thank you for being a channel legend and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to talk about that little rabbit hole even more. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And whoa, Jack, whoa! But with that,
Whoa, Jack! Whoa, we're going to war and you didn't even say anything? Could you say something next time? Thank you.
whoa, what do you mean, Jack? And also, Steelwork Film said, you are, before we move on, I got to get a live chat. The Steelworks Film said, you are incorrect about the Japanese strike on Hawaii. The U.S. had insight on the attack, but ignored the warning. Yeah, but they still didn't officially declare a war, though. I mean, Ukraine had insight that the Russians were going to invade them before the 23rd of February in 2022, but that doesn't mean that that was, yes, now this is really an official war. Like, they're giving you notice that they're going to war. Not really. Because military activity that would suggest that they're going to war doesn't mean that war is being declared. That could just be a military exercise. And so I see what you're saying there, but I would still have to disagree with that. I would have to say that that doesn't mean that there is an official declaration of war, because building up forces in advance is just a part of starting a war. It doesn't mean that that is an official declaration, though. That's not like someone wrote down on a paper, the United States Congress has officially declared a state of war with the Russian Federation. It's not like that. It's not like, well, it's like the Gulf War. We never gave the Iraqis a letter going, oh, by the way, America's at a state of war with you now. Tee-hee, cope, cry, seethe, you know, all that stuff. We didn't give them a letter. We just said, get out of Kuwait. They didn't get out of Kuwait, and then we started bombing them. And we never gave them an official declaration of war, but they damn well knew when those bombs were hitting Baghdad that they were in a state of war with America at that point. But I hope that does address that fairly well, at least from what I understand. And with that, it is time for us
Those bombs must be from Baghdad, the way they Baghdad us up. You know what I'm saying?
What do you mean, Jack? Listen. Those hoes must be from Iraq. The way they back that ass up.
Oh, the worms.
The worms. But moving on from that, because we still have loads of news to cover, and we have very little time to cover it, it is time for us to move on into the news of what's going on in Ukraine. And that starts us off with the location unknowns, where we got to see, apparently that's a little spicy. But we did get to see a Mad Max PT-91 Twardy in Ukrainian service. Boy, howdy, look at that thing. That thing has been Mad Max to hell and back. I'm telling you what. But really cool to see a PT-91 Twardy like that. From what we understand, it was in training, so it's not on the front lines, but still pretty neat to see. We also got the Russian casualty report as well, which was very nice to see. Ooh!
Oh, man, the casualty report's insane. 6 Bobcats, but the other numbers is where it's really at. 1,220 troops? Man, that's freaking crazy.
And it was a good day. 1,220 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed in the past 24 hours, along with 19 armored personnel carriers, 45 supply trucks, 4 main battle tanks, 40 artillery pieces, 22 drones, and 6 Bobcat skid steers. That is pretty wild and really nice to see, and we love to know that the Ukrainian defensive is working incredibly well, and I have a feeling that very soon North Korean forces will be joining the casualty report altogether. But moving on from that and into our actual Vovchansk front news, a lot was going on over here. We were able to see that apparently some FPV drone strikes were occurring on Russian military vehicles in this area. Check it out. That was a Dishka, and it just got blown up. And we got to see a Menomet right here. And we got to see a Vot, or called a Svivala, or Svivana, or whatever. But we can see it got hit and it caught on fire. We can see a Rapira right here, a 100mm Rapira, and an MTLB. And they're all getting toasted. I mean, hell, the Ukrainians ought to open up a toaster company the way they cooking these Russians up. And we can see a little radio antenna right here that they're about to hit, and they got right there. And oh my god, I don't even know what that was, but we see them hitting a Grad, or a Ural. We can see them hitting another Russian position, another Russian dugout. We see them hitting a BTR, a D-30 artillery piece. They're just juicing up them Russians in that area. I mean, hell, they're juicing up better than some Olympic athletes do. But we were also able to see that the 42nd Brigade was firing some rockets in an indirect support role against Russian Federation forces in the area of Vovchansk. We were able to see the Grad firing right there. And this guy just running around in front of the camera. But we can see them firing some more, and boy howdy, does it look good. Oh dang, wow, that was turbo mode. And we can just see them showing a montage of their Grads firing off at the Russians.
I feel very gracious when I see this Grad firing like this. I feel like gratitude.
Man, you know something, man? You know what? I'm going to hold off on that one. It was a joke involving the word Grad and the North Korean army. And y'all can fill in the blanks of how that joke would have unfolded. But I think that y'all would have found it funny. But moving on from that and into the area of Bufrovatka, we got to see some fighting that was ongoing in the region today. This was from a Colombian. And he is not like other Colombians who are putting out that, you know, Colombian snow. He's putting down that Colombian fire. You know what I mean? Complete opposite. By the way, speaking of which, no joke, that joke actually had a little bit of a purpose behind it. While the Colombian nation is known greatly for the cartels, which produce a large amount of cocaine, that has actually allowed the Colombian military a lot of at least asymmetrical warfare experience. And from what we understand, the Colombian armed forces is actually one of the most competent in at least the Americas at conducting anti-terrorist or asymmetrical warfare operations, which is a very interesting thing that has resulted in their fight against the cartels. But this guy probably has a lot of experience with that. He is probably a Colombian army veteran who then joined the International Legion. But here's the clip. You see him trying to clear a jam with a machine gun. And now reloading it. And now he's laying down that heat. Yar, that be some fine Colombian blow. Oh, we hear a drone. Ooh, oh my goodness,
crap.
That was close. It blew up in the trees right above him.
Se me trabó esta hijo de puta cuando los tenía enfrente. Pero
He's cussing in Spanish, if y'all are wondering what he's saying. Oh, dude, that guy's got a crank! No way, that's actually pretty cool. That's the AKS-74U, by the way. The crank is an American nickname for that gun. We hear a little bit more firing going on. We see him waiting to possibly start laying down some more fire on the Russians, but we hear gunfire going on all around them. We can also hear some artillery coming in. And that's the end of the clip, but showing us a little bit of the fighting going on around Buchervatka. Meanwhile, behind the lines near the city of Vovchansk, we were able to see that the 3rd Brigade was able to find a small Russian ammo depot and blow it up. We believe that this was in the village of Platonivka, but we can see them dropping the bomblet right there, and boosh, it blows up. And then we can see that the ammo inside the house caught on fire and started to blow up as well. And that's the end of that clip. Oh, buddy, was it nice to see? Wasn't it, Matthew? It was nice.
It was clever. I'll admit, it was pretty clever. It took a lot of thinking, intellect, and also prowess on the ground to pull off this one. It was a big one.
Man, hitting that word soup right there. I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah, man.
Hell yeah.
You know, actually, the reason why I did that is I was actually reading the chat. I didn't even know what happened, to be honest with you. I just like went on a rampage.
Man, I'm telling you what, man, but it was a good one, man. It sounded just like some representative at Northrop Grumman will say, hey, I'll get this boy a job. But anyways, moving on from that, we got to see Russian air defense got destroyed today right outside of Belgrade. We actually got to see the explosion and everything. Check it out. Look at that. Kaboosh! It be blowing up. Oh man, and Defender Marcial said, no one will tell those North Korean troops what they will be facing. No one will. And you know, one thing that I was actually laughing with Matthew before the stream is I was saying, you know, the North Koreans are going to show up around these grizzled alcoholic Russians because unlike North Korea, where food is a scarcity, so alcohol is also a scarcity as well, considering that it requires either grain, potatoes, or something to generally ferment to create the alcohol. They probably don't have a massive access to alcohol in North Korea. And so these Russians, who have a pretty okay access to food, especially compared to the North Koreans, and an unlimited access to alcohol, are going to be messing with these North Koreans wherever they're stationed on the line. And I will bet you that a friendly fire incident is going to happen in between the North Koreans and the Russians at some point in the future, because the North Koreans are going to get hostile against the Russians and probably start firing on them. Also, another thing that I don't know, you know what, I'm going to save that for a rabbit hole later on, because we still have loads of news to cover. I was just looking at that, and I got to make sure to get this news out to y'all, but maybe I'll talk about this once we get through all of the news on the front. But moving on into the very northern areas, we got to see some Russians getting... Excuse me, that Cyberpunk 2077 music do be hitting different these days, but we see the drone flying straight into the opening in the building, and in a second it'll explode, and oh my goodness, the building disappeared. And now we can see another drone coming in for another Russian vehicle. Dude, imagine the North Koreans, though, man, showing up in Ukraine and those old-ass 1950s uniforms with nothing but AKs and maybe some Chonmahos and just trying to survive. Like, that is going to be a trip, man. It's going to be a freaking trip to see that unfold. But, anyways.
You don't ever want to show up to the battlefield with a Chonmaho. But anyways, I saw here in the live chat that Christian Cruz had brought up something. He said North Korea has a serious drug problem. They pop the stuff like aspirin, talking about a particular drug, some amphetamines here. Does the North Korean army use amphetamines like the Nazis did back in the day, or is it not quite that significant?
Oh, we would like to know that answer. Let us know if you know. But moving on from that into Svatobe, we got... What?
You don't know?
I don't know if they use amphetamines. I've never heard that before, so I was like, huh, that's news. Like, let me know. I mean, I could read my HTTP really quickly and see if the Army mentions it anywhere. I mean, maybe they will. But anyways, moving on from that and down to the area of Seversk, we got to see an L119 being used in a fire support role against the Russians. Okay, well, my ears are bleeding now, but we're going to be muting that, and we can see them getting the gun ready to fire. And also, it seems that many people are wondering what the hell a Chonmaho is, and I'll show y'all what a Chonmaho is.
I'm not sure if we want to see.
Oh, you do. Oh, you do. You do want to see. Oh, man. Oh man. Okay, so I only got this very grainy picture to show y'all of a Chonmaho, but it'll get the idea across. This is the Chonmaho.
Oh, that's disappointing.
Yeah, it's literally just a T-62. That's it.
Oh, damn.
But yeah, I mean that's the Chonmaho. I mean, like, what does the name mean? It actually means Pegasus.
Pegasus, man. What? It's like, man, I don't know if I'd call that Pegasus, that tank right there. I wouldn't call it that.
And what does the ho stand for though? Because it just says the Chonma, and then they have up here Chonmaho, and it really is a
That's the
Chonmaho.
driver.
Just bro, that's the commander. The commander's an absolute hoe. Just comes out of that turret, man. Dude, he comes out of that turret and he goes, "Oh, who wants to have fun time?" Like it's just oh my lord, man. Dude, he'd be like, "Oh my goodness." You know what? Let me see here. Can we find out anything else about the? Oh, sorry. Okay, come on. There's got to be some. Oh, we got the Chonma 92. Let's see. Referred to as either the M1992 or Chonma Ho 3 / dumbass in Western sources. And let's see here. What else do we have? Do we have anything about you know, Matthew, that new that new North Korean tank that they showed a while ago? Do you know what it's called?
Yes. No, I don't.
Chonmaho 2. Like, it's literally Chonmaho,
like a
but
sequel.
better.
Yeah, the upgraded Chonmaho.
Dude, it's Chris's mom. It's the upgraded ho. Like, it's even better. But moving on from all of this side note about the Chonmaho and everything, it's time for us to move on down into the northern area of Bakhmut, where we got to see the Russian BTR-82 got blown up by the Rarug unit today. And you can see that right up there. It actually says Rarug in Ukrainian, but Raggy. But there we go. There's the BTR-82, and there it goes. Oh my lord, dude, it blew up. The bomb didn't even hit it, but it blew up. That is crazy. Nice to see. I love it. And moving on from that into our next clip, we also got to see the damage that has been caused to Chasiv Yar so far in the fighting. And of course, Chasiv Yar has been heavily damaged in the fighting that has occurred around the city, but Ukraine still holds quite successfully. Moving on from that and into the area outside of Orlivka, we also got to see a drone attack on a Russian BMP and a Russian MBT in this area. And Anonymous said, sounds like something Drake did. Dude, Drake do be the kind of fella to Chonmaho. You know what I mean? Man, I think Diddy also Chonmaho as well. He likes to party and you gotta tell him no.
No.
But moving on from that, we also got to see a Russian MBT getting destroyed as well in this area. It appears to have been a T-64 BV. Man, they sizzling. And but we see them dropping the grenade right into the hatch. And it blows up. And the ammunition detonation is soon to follow. And there it goes. It be roasting. You can even see a little bit of fire coming out of the barrel right there. That's really nice. Artistic even.
Man, it looks like they did like donuts in the spot before they burnt out.
It really does, man. And then we got the outro right here. Love to see it. Always love a couple of laughs.
Man, that's like a real life view of how the North Korean soldiers look, man. Like because they haven't eaten nothing in like a decade. That's like there they are, right there.
Man,
get rid of the guns too, because they don't have those either. Actually, get rid of everything except for the bones, then you got the North Korean soldier.
Dude, man, the North Koreans be showing up listening to that No Motherland Without You. They be leaving listening to Where Are You, Dear General? You know what I mean? Like,
man, they be leaving talking about, Where are you, dear Twinkie? I need some food, some calories, please.
Dude, I'm going to bring that up in the question segment because I want to make sure that we can get through all the news and then get to the extra stuff in a second. So I'm going to hold that. But moving on down to the area of Avdiivka, we did get to see that around Ochretine, a Ukrainian Bradley from the 47th Magura was firing on them Russians with a 25mm Bushmaster. We see it firing at an incredibly high angle at an FPV drone. Look at that. Have y'all ever seen that before? A Bradley engaging an FPV. And it got it, too. It blew the thing up. I mean, that's actually really impressive. I got to give credit to them for doing that. That was pretty cool. But moving on from that clip and on to our next one in the area, we also got to see around Opitne, a Russian soldier got hit by a mine, or really their car got hit by a mine right there. Dang. Pretty explosive, right? Well, 3 guys walked away from the explosion. There goes one of them. Oh, блядь! Блядь, сука, блядь, пиздите нахуй, блядь. I don't know how he made it out, but hey, he did. There he goes. As the watermark covers the guy, but you can see him right there. And then another 2 will end up running away from the rubble here soon as well. And here comes a second and a third one over there. You can see them over there to the right a little bit. There they are. 2 and 3. And they're running around as well. I mean, isn't that crazy? Meanwhile, their comrades inside the Jeep are going, the worms! The worms! But anyways, there they go. Off they go, running in a group. Of course, they have to get in a group. The drones won't attack them unless if they're in a group.
2 group, блядь. Oh, no, not 2 group. Make it 3 group. That's even better.
Dude, North Koreans are going to be hearing that, and they're going to be like, what the hell do they mean, 2 group? And then they're going to go to the front and go, oh, 2 group. But moving on from that, we got to see a Ukrainian T-72B3 that was actually captured by the Russians. Well, actually, they captured it from the Russians, and now they're using it against the Russians. With that lo-fi hip-hop beat playing in the background.
Meat. Lo-fi hip-hop meat.
That lo-fi hip-hop meat. That be that party meat you get from Publix. But anyways, let's see. Sins said, liars! Sorry, your mother. But we can see them firing the main gun on the T-72B3. Man, oh my lord. The ventilation in the T-72B3 doesn't really exist, does it? Everyone just breathing in some nice ammonia after every shot. See them firing again here. And come on. Any second now. And there we go.
Oh.
And that's the end of that clip. But really cool to see them using a captured Russian tank against the Russians. Moving on from that and down into the area around Marinka, we also got to see the Russian ATV got hit pretty hard today, too. Take a look at this. Okay, we're going to be muting that. I don't know what the hell that was, but boom! There goes the vehicle, toasting and roasting. As Ash says, so much misinfo. And the only misinformation that you're getting is who your parents really are. You were adopted. But moving on from that...
Does the bro have a name, though? Does he have a name much? Oh, an ASD GH is not a name. That's just a bunch of letters.
Bro, they just had that coke-fueled, like, fervor, just slammed their hand down on the keyboard once and went with it as a name. Like, it's like... Not a good one. Not a good one. Many such cases. Not a good one. But moving on from that, we also got to see an AMX-10 RC in an indirect fire support role. Would you look at that thing? I think the AMX-10 is actually a really cool light tank. Like, I think it is. Me personally.
It's interesting looking. It's very compact. Looks like it could, like, do the roly-poly forward or backwards.
Dude, this thing looks like a duck. I'm not going to lie. And that's why I like it. I respect it. It looks like Le Quack. But moving on from that and out of the little bit of news that we got from that area and down into Kherson, we also got to see a massive fire was raging in Oleski today. Would you look at that? I mean, that was huge. And from what we know, it was just behind Oleski. We don't know what was hit, but something serious was hit. Maybe ammunition and fuel-based. But moving on from that little bit of news and on down into the area of Sevastopol, we also got to hear that the Russians have confirmed that Ukraine has mined the entrance to Sevastopol Bay, meaning that ships really can't enter or exit the bay without the danger of blowing up on a mine and sinking literally right outside of the harbor. That is incredible news, and it means that Sevastopol is largely going to be very dangerous to use as a military harbor from this point forward. And with that, we're now going to be moving on up into Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 854 of Dawar. And so, without further ado, here is one of the shortest speeches we have ever seen in Ukrainian history.
Speech, give me a speech, please.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Почав цей день на Донеччині разом з нашими воїнами, разом з головкомом Сирським та новим командувачем Об'єднаних сил генералом Гнатовим. Представив сьогодні офіційна Андрія Гнатова, усім, хто відповідає за оборону на Донеччині. Це людина молода, але знання фронту, досвід у нього саме такі, як потрібні. Завдання для генерала Гнатова, очевидно, знищувати окупанта і берегти, дуже важливо, якнайбільше життів наших воїнів. Разом з главкомом сьогодні заслухали доповіді безпосередньо з позицій. Був радий особисто побачити і подякувати нашій 110-ту бригаду та 47-му бригаду. Абсолютно героїчні, результативні хлопці. Подякував нашим бойовим медикам, хлопцям, дівчатам, які роблять найважливіше – стабілізують поранених, рятують, максимально підтримують. Дуже зворушливо бачити таку відданість і бажання допомагати. Провів тут, на Донеччині, нараду щодо безпеки та підтримки людей, детальну нараду. Багато питань і по забезпеченню життя. Це вода, це соціальні питання, евакуація, і по допомозі обороні, по відновленню житла. Вдячний кожному, хто дійсно на 100% все робить, щоб наша Донеччина вистояла. І буде окрема розмова в Києві, зокрема з урядовцями, які повинні бути і тут, і в інших місцях поблизу фронту, в складних громадах, де людям потрібні негайні рішення. Рішення, яких просто з Києва не видно. І був здивований, що деякі профільні урядовці не були тут по півроку і більше. Буде серйозна розмова і буду робити щодо них відповідні висновки. Слава Україні!
And they're all Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 854 of the news of the war in Ukraine. And really the news from around the world today. And with that, it is time for us to move on into a second segment of the stream. And I don't know how we did it, Matthew, but we had 50 news bulletins to cover. Usually, on average, we have 25 to 30. So we had almost twice as many as we normally have, and somehow we were able to make sure to cover them all in about an hour and 50 minutes, which is right on target. Usually, by the way, y'all are wondering, like, why in the world is that right on target? We just run the stream, right? Usually we have a kind of like a time frame, or at least I have a time frame that I'm kind of working off of how long each segment should be. So about an hour and 50 minutes every single night is dedicated specifically to the news segment. And then from that point on, from about 10:50 to 11 onwards, everything is dedicated to the question segment. And that could go on for however long it really needs to go on for us to be able to address all of the super chats and as many live chats as we can. So that could be like an hour long, it could be 45 minutes long, or it could end up being an hour and a half long, which most of them actually end up being nowadays. But still, just letting y'all know, we actually have a bit of a time frame because we do want to get the news out to y'all so that way y'all can hear it at least within a reasonable time frame about the length of a movie. And you know something that was really crazy, y'all? I was just thinking about this. We tried to watch the movie Oppenheimer, I think a few days ago, and we found out that the movie was 3 hours and 10 minutes long. And we thought, wow, that's an incredibly long movie right there. And we stopped watching it about an hour in because it was just too long. And to be quite honest, I feel like it was kind of drawn out a little bit. But beyond that, what was really wild to think is that usually our streams are longer than Oppenheimer. They're like 3 hours and 30 minutes long, and we were watching like an hour of Oppenheimer. Like, man, this is too much. We gotta go. And so, I was like, oh, that's bizarre. We actually end up running a show pretty much every single night that's fresh and original nightly that is longer than the movie Oppenheimer. That's pretty wild when you think about it. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on into that fun and interesting segment at the end of the stream, which is where we get to talk to all of y'all. It is the funnest moment ever because we get to talk about whatever y'all want to talk about. Really, we do. And I gotta say, I cannot wait for us to be able to talk about everything that is going on. And also, really quickly, I just saw something in the chat. Someone said, ads are running on the stream from yesterday. What's up with that? Well, they shouldn't be, because I'm looking right here at our live streams. None of them have ads. This one has ads off and it has not been copyrighted either. So if you were seeing an ad on that live stream, that is not supposed to be there at all. The stream wasn't even copyrighted for there to be ads. Because all of our streams, I guess is the best way to prove, all of our streams, this one actually got copyrighted, but all of them are ad-free. The ads are off. There are no ads that run. So if we make anything running a stream, it is just entirely off of Super Chats. If it wasn't for that, we are not able to do this as a living and a job, which is how we run the show. But with that, I hope that at least covers that well, because I saw a very concerning statement about ads running, and we are so adamant on not having ads running on these live streams at all. So that is a little interesting to hear that they are, although they never should be. But anyways, with that, it is now time for us to move on into that next segment. And Matthew, what do we got?
All right, and it's now time for the last segment of the stream. And it's time for me to start yipping, and it's time for me to start yapping. And at the last poll right here, the question says, Israel has sent large numbers of forces to the Lebanese border, and its citizens are fleeing the country en masse, and what are your thoughts? An overwhelming 80% said Israel will be at war in days, while 6% said it seems possible, but far off, and 4% said it's all a big bluff, and war will not happen. So on this one, I would have to be with the 80%. Of course, it is speculation. We're going off what we're seeing here. We have no official confirmation that war will break out in mere days. But from what we can see, and also the country's asking people to leave, it looks like it's going to be happening here pretty soon. If I had to take an educated guess, I would say probably about a week or so. But of course, that is speculation. But based on what we're seeing, it looks like it could be going down. Israel's sending a ton of equipment to the border, and also people are panicking. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my personal opinion, Israel will be at war with Lebanon in days. I'm not exactly sure if it's going to be days, though. It may actually be a week or two, because that's one thing I've noticed with Twitter, is that Twitter, dude, I'm telling you, man, Twitter always thinks that a war will happen like literally 48 hours from now. They're like, one tank is showing up at the northern Israeli border, and Twitter's like, oh my God, it's happening, 2 days, everyone's going to die, and I'm like, wait a minute, hang on. I'm like, that's kind of like a short timetable. Wouldn't it be like a few weeks? And then we try and work off of that a little bit, and then they always end up being wrong. So I would say maybe a week or two. But it will happen very, very soon. I mean, it's going to be happening so soon, we'll probably end up covering it live for all of y'all not that much longer after we make this statement, within maybe just days or maybe a week or so. So I would say it's certainly going to happen. Israel will be at war very soon, and it's just a matter of waiting at this point. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least off of my own opinion and my own analysis. And whoa, Jack, whoa! But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so that is actually our last poll to address. So we're now moving back into our Super Chat segment. And up first, we have a very generous donation, a $50 donation from Darren Maynard, who's a longtime channel legend, and huge shout out to Darren for that support. And I don't see any comment attached to it, but thank you very much, Darren. Once again, he did leave a super sticker of the YouTube pair demolishing a city, which is absolutely crazy. And also, I think that's his 10th super chat ever on the live stream, so a huge shout out to you, Darren.
Hey!
And unfortunately, what say you?
I gotta say, thank you, Darren Maynard, for showing Chris's mom level in a city. Fairly normal thing for her to do. Whoa, Jack, whoa! But beyond that, I gotta say, thank you once again for your massive support, Darren Maynard, and helping this channel to keep on running. You have been around for quite some time. And I got to thank you for throwing in your 10th super chat in the history of this channel. Folks like you have helped this channel to keep on running through thick and thin, through some of our best times and through some of our worst times. And I've got to say that right now is certainly it is the best time on the channel. I'm not even kidding. What's crazy, y'all? This is absolutely bonkers. And let me make sure to put this out there to y'all. This channel has gained 1.6 thousand subscribers today alone. It has been insane. It's not stopping, actually. We are actually picking up speed with every passing day as a channel. We're getting a lot more momentum. A lot more people are watching. A lot more people are subscribing. It's absolutely insane to watch it unfold. And we are entirely proud of everyone who is stuck with us and everyone who's joining us right now who will continue to look at this channel for its news coverage every single day. It means so much to us that all of y'all find this to be your primary source of news, because we put in a lot of work and effort into this channel. And I'm not tooting my whistle here. I'm actually tooting Matthew's whistle. Matthew put out the video today saying that North Korean forces were going to be involved in the war in Ukraine. before literally anyone else really covered it in the world. I mean, I think one or two news sources had covered it, and that's where we got our information from. But after Matthew made that video, it was such a groundbreaking news coverage that he made. It was so early to the story, it was so well researched, and not only that, it was so well put together that literally everyone was talking about it. I even saw it mentioned on Reddit a couple of times in specific posts, and really everywhere. It was absolutely crazy to see that this channel is getting that much momentum, that we're actually being publicly discussed now on forums around the internet. And that is something that is incredibly cool to see. And I got to say, thank you so much to everyone who's joining us right now, the 1.6 thousand people who just joined the Lee Spring Army today, which is this channel, and also the hundreds of thousands of y'all who have been with us for a long time now, for always sticking with this channel and always counting on us for news coverage, because it is our honor, it is our privilege to be able to do that for all of y'all, and we are going to continue to do that well on into the future. And thanks to support like yours, Darren Maynard, we will be able to ensure that we can make sure that the Lee Spring Army will never die. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. In our next super chat here is going to go to Maud Day, who puts in that $25 donation. And thank you very much, Maud, for that support. They said, no support, eventually no channel. Do what you can. Hit the like, subscribe. Slava Ukraine.
And I got to say, thank you so much for the support, Maud Day, and helping this channel to keep on running. That is a little true. No support, eventually the channel may fizzle out. But that's the thing. As long as people enjoy our news and find our coverage to be greatly appreciated, the support will never end. And that means that our job will be very secure well into the future. It also incentivizes us a lot to make sure that our news is as accurate as possible, and that y'all can actually count and rely on instead of clickbaiting like a lot of people do for their views. And I think that that's a wonderful way to run the channel, is that our support is directly from the viewers, and that means that we're directly held accountable by the viewers. So if we start misleading y'all and clickbaiting y'all a lot, the support would begin to end, and this channel would be in a bit of a serious pickle. And so that actually, when you really think about it that way, that really is a great way to run a news channel, is to make sure that your existence is based off of people being satisfied with the amount of research and detail that you put in your news. And if they aren't, your channel, your news network may just end up going under completely. And it's not relying on sponsors or really just getting folks in the door and having them watch your show and then selling those ad spots to sponsors, meaning that you can really stay on air forever but never really have any validity or truth to what you're saying, a lot like most of the mainstream news organizations are nowadays, like Fox and CNN and all of the others. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And thank you once again for the support, Maud Day, and helping this channel to keep on running. If y'all do enjoy the channel, hit that subscribe button. Just hit it, would y'all? I mean, we would love to see it. We've already hit, dang, dude, 232,630 subscribers. We are actually getting really close to 233,000 subscribers just today. Ain't that crazy?
You know what's wild is I just looked at the video. I was like, where the hell do all those subscribers come from? It looks like probably about a good chunk of them. Most of them came from the video that was put out today. I think it's about 1.3 thousand subscribers alone from the video, which is crazy. And also huge thanks to everybody for subscribing. And I think the rest of them might have come from the stream tonight. So we've almost getting almost close to 2,000 subscribers in one single day, which is absolutely mental.
I mean, that's crazy. We rarely ever see days like that. And what's even crazier is that when you look at the subscriber graph, because this is actually our lifetime subscriber graph, we are growing at an unprecedented speed. This is this day right here, September 5th, is the very first day of this channel in history in 2021. And then the Ukraine war started on the 23rd of February, which was right here. And so then you could see where the channel blew up right here at the beginning, and we got up to about 40,000 subscribers, and this has been everything from that point forward. And right now, the channel, after we dropped out of law school, which was a watershed moment in the history of this channel, because we went balls to the wall after we dropped out of law school, you can see that the channel has been on a never-ending upwards growth, to the point that really 30% of all of the subscribers on this channel right now have come from after we dropped out of law school. 30% of them, which is nuts, man. It's crazy, because it took us 2 years. Let me make sure that I'm correct on that. 2022, 2023. So actually, it took us about 2 years to get to 157,000 subscribers. It's taken us less than a year to get up to 233,000 subscribers nearly. I mean, that's wild. And I got to say, huge thanks to everyone who's congratulating us for the massive subscriber growth. It's insane to watch it grow like that because it's unheard of in this channel to have consistent growth like that over this kind of a period of time. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. But thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running all day.
Yes, indeed. And our next super chat goes to William Dugard, who puts in a $20 donation. And a huge shout out to William as well. He said, do you think that China would interfere diplomatically in the DPRK to stop Kim if he did something really stupid?
I think it possibly could happen. Because Matthew and me look at this in a different way, and I'm about to say this, and it immediately hit me. I was like, Matthew's going to disagree with this after I say it, but that's just a difference of opinion that we have. And I also want to make this very clear that when we have differences of opinion, because whenever we do, there's always like a small group of people in the live chat who are like, oh my god, it's a fight! The Enforcer channel's crumbling! It's not, that's not how it works. We can disagree with each other, and then we just end up, doing our thing, and it just is what it is. But Matthew will probably disagree with this, but this is how I look at it. The Chinese will prioritize national security over everything, and historically that has been proven to be true time and time again. That's why they supported Vietnam during the Vietnam War, and right after the Vietnam War ended, they went to war with Vietnam over border interests. That's why they're in BRICS, but they'll go and fight India and club their border guards to death in the area of Kashmir because they're securing their border interests. That's why they will try and keep up heavy economic ties with America to build themselves up economically, but then they might throw that all away to secure their national security interests over Taiwan, which they view to be a part of China. They will put national security over everything, time and time again, and their border interests will also trump everything as well. It is a thing that you can guarantee yourself on. If the Chinese are a country that exists, they will enforce their border security above all else. There is just no doubt about that in my mind. And so going off of that, we know that the Chinese, if the North Koreans start to do something very stupid, that will start to destabilize the area and threaten Chinese national security or Chinese border security, they will step in and will go, you will stop this right now or else. They will. And they have done that in the past to many countries, and they have ended up going to blows with countries that you would technically say are their friends, but they still ended up fighting them nonetheless for their own strategic interests. So I would say, yes, the Chinese would step in diplomatically, maybe even militarily, against the North Koreans to secure their own national security interests if it came to it, because that's what they've always done, and that's always what they will do. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, and I thank you so much once again for support. And I know that Matthew probably has a different opinion on this. And Matthew, do you have a different opinion? And if you do, what do you think the Chinese would do in this kind of a situation?
And remind me of the question one more time. What was the original question?
The original question was, do you think China would interfere diplomatically in the DPRK to stop Kim Jong-un if he did something incredibly stupid?
Me personally, I would say that short of launching nuclear weapons at someone, I don't think China would interfere with anything. In fact, I think China would pretty much end up having to back up North Korea because that is nonetheless their ally in some form or another. And they're not going to turn their back on them for stupidity. Because if China was being smart, they would not ally with a rogue state like North Korea to begin with, because that state is absolutely out of control, and even China really can't control them. So, the mere fact that they're aligned with something like that tells me that they really don't care what they do, as long as it doesn't end the entire world and do something crazy like launching nukes at somebody, then I would say they're probably not going to interfere, but that's just me.
Interesting. That is actually a little bit different than I'm looking at it. I think they would actually throw the North Koreans down if they did something incredibly stupid. You're saying the opposite. And so, once again, this gets thrown into the chat. What do y'all think? Do y'all think that the Chinese would actually trump, do you think Chinese national security interests would trump their alliance with North Korea? Or do you think that they might set that aside and possibly support North Korea through thick and thin? That is actually a complete opposite of opinions that we have, and I'm wondering what y'all folks in the chat are thinking. Which side do you think sounds a little bit more logical? My side or Matthew's side? Or Enforcer side or Enforcer Matt's side? And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And let's see here. I'm looking in the live chat right now. You can just keep dreaming. China will not give up Russia to work with America. Oh, no, it's
I
not.
gotta agree.
It's not about working with America. It's about helping themselves. Because, you see, if you're working off of that, like, man, in the past, China would have never teamed up with America. Because you don't know the reason why Nixon went to China. Nixon went to China because they were scared of the Soviet Union. And so that by that reason alone, China allied themselves with the United States. That's why, actually getting out of that goofy voice I'm doing, that's why if you go back and look at American pop culture in the late 70s and early 80s, like the movie Red Dawn, you will actually see that there was a reference in the movie to the Chinese actually fighting on the side of the United States. Because on a diplomatic and military level at the time, China was a lot closer to America than they were to the Soviet Union. And so they have done that in the past before when their interests have not aligned themselves with the Soviet Union. And so I don't think that they would be amiss to do that in the modern day, especially if their national security interests are at concern. Maybe I have a different view of that because I have read and learned a lot about Chinese history, and it was a big part of my education in college was to learn about how the modern communist Chinese have conducted themselves in the world. So maybe I think a little bit differently because of that. But there's no opinion that is wrong. And I started to think when I was saying that sounds like I'm trying to say, well, I'm educated and y'all are not. So, and that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that my lens is different because I have different information I'm working off of. And y'all's lens isn't wrong. Y'all are just working off of a different viewpoint than I am. But it is still interesting seeing. Only time will tell which one of us is right. Whether they would actually throw North Korea to the curb or whether they'd stick through thick and thin. Only time will tell. But still a very interesting conversation to have nonetheless. But with that,
Also, I see here. I think there's a South Korean. I really cannot read these languages that well. I think it's either South Korean or simplified Mandarin or something like that. But the user there with that name said, "No loon, no war." That honestly pretty much sums it up. I think if you don't have a loon in charge, then you probably won't have a war because most people do not want to go to war unless you're a nutcase like Kim Jong Un. But then again, we have to remember though that North Korea's government stays in power. Kind of like all the other authoritarian states have stayed in power as well. They operate off of hatred. If North Korea were to lose their enemy tomorrow, which was South Korea, and all of a sudden the South said, we're going to unify and we're all going to become, like North Korea, communist and like a hermit kingdom, then North Korea would have to find a new enemy because if they didn't, they would not be able to keep their people all together because it absolutely sucks to live in Korea. And unless there's a big boogeyman waiting outside, they cannot unify all their people together to do anything. At least that's my take on it. But what do you think, Enforcer?
I would have to say that unfortunately I wasn't really listening to that all too much because I was trying to translate their name because it was Korean. And their username is literally V for Vendetta.
Oh, V for Vendetta. That's an interesting name.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool. Because Chinese, if you want to see what Chinese looks like, because it's a big difference, and we're going to go with the simplified because that's what the modern Chinese use. This is what modern Chinese will look like. This is what Korean looks like. In my head, Korean is a lot, I believe it's actually called Hangul, but Korean is a lot more aesthetically pleasing in my mind than Chinese is. Like, it's like straight lines, sharp edges. I think it looks really good as a language, like a writing system. And then Chinese has a lot more of like a freehand kind of a look to it that makes it look a little bit more sloppy, in my opinion. But still, it is a pretty interesting looking language. And actually, I'm learning Chinese right now behind the scenes. I'm trying to learn that a little bit in the background. But anyways, with that, I hope we've been able to address that well. But yeah, I would have to say, man, that your point is interesting, but sadly, I was so distracted with trying to translate their name, I didn't really hear most of it. But
basically, it boils down to just what they said, V for Vendetta. They said, no loon, no war. And the point taken, if you don't have Kim Jong-un in charge or some loon, then you probably won't have a war because people don't want to go to war.
That's true. I would agree with that. I would actually back that up. I would say that's correct. I would back that up 100%. I would agree. And so with that, thank you so much, V for
That's valid. That's valid.
Bro, that's so valid on God, man. Like the toilet flushing in the background and everything.
That point is straight facts, no cap.
Bro, that's straight facts, man. Hey, did you file your taxes? Nuh-uh. And I'm going to brag about it to my coworkers so that way when I get on bad terms with them, they'll report me to the IRS. But anyways, beyond that, and by the way, that's a whole bit of channel lore that y'all, I wish I could tell y'all about because it was so funny. You know what? Why not tell them about it, man? I'll give the shorthand version. We were invited onto a Twitter talk space run by this guy called Narwhal or something. We went on there. We saw that there was a member of the Chinese Communist Party on. Keemstar was on. And also, I think Dr. Disrespect was on, and I don't know if you've heard this lately, Matthew, but apparently Dr. Disrespect or his team is in some trouble because one of them had some dealings with a individual that could be considered a minor, but not the kind that works shoveling coal, if you know what I mean. And so they've ended up getting into some hot water lately. And so there were all these people there, and Matthew and me started to sense things ain't going that well here. And so then we ended up bailing out. So we were kind of joking about that whole thing. But with that, moving on from that, because it's a whole legacy, a saga of its own. It's an interesting one. But anyways, moving on from that, I want to make sure that we continue to stay a little bit on topic, a little bit on point. And with that, I think we'll have to move on to the next one. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so moving on to our next super chat, we have one from Panama Floyd, who put in a $20 donation. And a huge shout out to Panama for that very generous support as well. He said, Enforcer, my dad, ex-Korean war vet, now gone, and very sorry to hear that. He said North Korean tactics were call the Chinese in the middle of the winter.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty true one. Because if you ever look at the at the Korean War map. Oh, let me see here. Korean War maps. We actually got. Oh yeah. All right. So. Oh man, we got them all. We got them all, dude. I'm loving this. Hang on. I want to see a score evacuation plan. Okay. So. Oh dang, man! I just closed them. Hang on. Korean War map. Hang on. Let me go back to the army. Let me go back to the army. We got the U.S. Army. What? What the hell are they talking about? They said, pardon our dust. Our website is undergoing maintenance and some content may be inaccessible or load incorrectly. Thank you for your patience. Hey, what? It's the U.S. Army Center of Military History. We have plenty of patience with these guys. But anyways, let me see here if we can find the map that we are going to be looking for. The Battle of Chongchong. Dang, that's not it. We really just want a front-wide map. Oh, hey, but it's just to show y'all how far north we had made it. That little black line up there that says to Musan, that little black line at the top of the map was actually the North Korean-Chinese border. This is where U.S. forces had made it. This is about a regiment size, a battalion unit, and I believe that is an entire corps that is right there of the Republic of Korea that was moving alongside the U.S. forces over here. But anyways... Well, let me show y'all where that is in North Korea to show y'all how far, at least in this map, they're showing we made it. So I will type in the name of the town, Kapsan, in North Korea. And that is one of the villages that is on that map. So when you look at this map here, which doesn't really impart a lot of information, you know, or if you want to say it doesn't really give a load of information. Damn, bro, that bass boost right there just blew my eardrums out, man. I think you just kill everyone on the stream.
Is it better now?
That is worse. That is so much worse. That is terrible. Like I'm going deaf over here.
What about now? What about now?
Let me see. 1 second. Stream.
What happened? Like, can you hear me better now?
That's what happened.
Oh god.
That's what happened on air, man. I'm not joking.
What's it doing now?
It's doing a lot better.
Okay, good. Is it still doing good?
Yeah, it's
See, what happened was I got a new mic and I was like, let me try it out real quick. This can go great. So I plugged it in, and it turns out this thing has a lot of gain built into it. So I needed to turn down the gain on the controller a little bit, but it was set to 100 decibels. So that's what it sounds like when you max the gain out on your controller and your mic has max gain. It sounds like that.
Dude, wait, hang on. Let me go back and play the whole thing for you. 1 second. We really just want a front-wide map. Just listen to this. Oh, hey, but it's just to show y'all how far north we had made it. That little black line up there that says to Musan, that little black line at the top of the map was actually the North Korean-Chinese border. Here it comes. This is where U.S. forces had made it. This is about a regiment size, a battalion unit, and I believe that is an entire corps that is right there of the Republic of Korea that was moving alongside the U.S. forces over here. Here it comes. But anyways, well, let me show y'all where that is in North Korea to show y'all how far, at least in this map, I backed up
they're
way too
showing
far,
we
but it's
made.
coming. So I will type in the name of the town, Kapsan, in North Korea. Here it goes. And that is one of the villages that is on that map. So when you look at this map here, which doesn't really impart a lot of information, you know, or if you want to say it doesn't really give a load of information. Damn, bro, that bass boost right there just blew my eardrums out, man. I think you just kill everyone on the stream.
Is it better now?
That is worse. That is so much worse. That is terrible. Oh my god. Dude, it started off sounding like a damn earthquake happened over there. Like, I was like, damn, dude. Like, it blew my eardrums out, man, literally.
Is it better now? Is it better now?
I was like, no, it's not. But
Man, that was horrible, though.
Dude,
Damn, man, that was so bad. You heard that like really loud bass boost, and then you heard just a freak come on the mic.
Is it better now?
Just like, no.
oh my god!
But it's sounding okay now, isn't it? It's like it's sounding pretty clear.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you though. I kind of like the old mic better. I'm not going to lie. Now hearing it live on air, I think the other one sounds better.
I think I got to play with the settings a little bit because they're still not right. So I don't know. Like I got to play with it some more.
But anyways, moving on back to what I was talking about just a moment ago. This is how far north we had made it into North Korea. We had made it all the way past Kapsan, and we were up around the area of Chonga-ri. So we were very close to the North Korean border. So yes, I would agree with you, Panama Floyd. The North Korean strategy is to call for Chinese help in winter, because when it was just the North Koreans, the South Koreans and the United States ended up rebounding from the pocket around the port of Busan and went all the way north and pretty much to the, I believe it's the Yalu River, if I'm correct. And let me check. Did they name the damn river? What the hell are these?
Those.
What are those? I don't know what these are. But they're on the Chinese side, and then on the North Korean side, there's nothing. I'm really interested in what these are. These like fish farms or something like that?
Man, I don't even know. Like, it's weird.
It's bizarre, man. Like, I don't have a clue what that is. I think this is the Yalu River, though. Yeah, it's the Yalu River. And we almost pushed them across the Yalu and into China, and that's when they joined. So I would completely agree with you, Panama Floyd. Ufada was right. The North Korean tactic is to call the Chinese in winter and pray to God that something changes. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support.
Is it better now?
And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So moving on to our next super chat, when my voice goes through puberty once again, we're going to go to this one, which goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a $20 donation. And huge shout out to Jenna for that massive support. And he said all of the North Korean soldiers will defect the second they get to Ukraine.
And also, Matthew, you were wildly quiet now. You're like whispering at this point. And I got to thank you so much for the support, Jenna Tolls. And I got to say, I think that we probably will see the defections will end up becoming an issue, or the social impact that these soldiers will have once they return to North Korea will start to become uncontrollable. Hopefully Matthew doesn't, absolutely, blow our ears out in a minute.
Oh, it's all good.
Okay, there we go. He's sounding a little bit better now. But beyond that, I would have to say that I think they probably will possibly defect if they go to Ukraine, or if they return back to North Korea. They will remember the unlimited access to food they had while in the war, and they will be wondering why they don't have that there, and that may cause some unrest, because once they have the best, you can't settle for less. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one. But before we do, Matthew, I actually saw Geomax say something very interesting. Argentina never annexed their own islands. England invaded and killed all inhabitants of the island in 1833 and claimed it like their own. Read Gaucho Rivero, spectacular bio, please. No, I'm not, because the Falkland Islands is Britain's. Argentina, I don't even believe existed as a country when Britain originally claimed it. I believe Sir Francis Drake, if I'm correct, claimed the island for the United Kingdom or the British Empire at the time. So, no, that is not an Argentine island. If they wanted it, why in the world did Argentina as a physical country never actually own the island until they invaded it in 1982? That makes no sense. And so, sorry if that offends you, but I'm not one for countries like Argentina claiming sovereignty over an island because they just want it to be. That seems ridiculous. It's been British forever. And let me really quickly, Falkland Islands. Let's see, Falkland Islands. Let me go here really quickly. Let's see. British rule was asserted in 1833. The first settlement was in 1764. So let's see here. See, Argentine military. Let's see here. So let's see. The first.
Is it better now?
Is it better now? And let's see here. Falklands remained. So let's see here. So if anyone actually has a legitimate claim, because one, from what I can tell historically, there was no existence of Argentines on the island. The closest thing that it comes to that is that, let's see here. In 1764, an establishment of Port Louis on East Falkland, which is this island over here, was conducted by a French captain, Louis-Antoine de Bougainville. And the 1765 foundation of Port Egmont on Saunders Island by Captain John Byron of the United Kingdom. So if anyone would have a legitimate claim to anything in the Falklands Islands, it maybe is the French, because they were the first one to the East Falklands, but even still, the British were the first ones to the West Falklands, and so it would make absolutely no sense to say that the Argentines have claim to the island, because physically the Argentines never were on the island. They just said it was a part of theirs because it was close to Argentina, and therefore logically it would be their land, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, because Chile is also right next to Argentina. How come that land isn't Argentine as well? But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, or at least from what the history shows, because whoever's there first gets it. And from what we can tell, the British and the French were there first, and then the French apparently dropped their claim later, or they lost it in conflict, and the British ended up taking the entirety of the Falklands Islands. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, I have a request for the audience as well. If y'all want to go back and get that part where it said,
Is it better now?
go and like make that into a meme, and whenever the Russians fail bigly or anything like that, whenever something bad happens to the Russians, just play that over the clip.
Is it better now?
Like, man, that would be like a perfect meme, like the bass boosted like "Is it better now" thing. I would love to see that. If someone could do that and send it to me, like Enforcer, we're going to show that on the stream. That'd be like an epic meme.
That would be a great one. And also, Matthew, I gotta say, the microphone situation, you might just want to switch back to your other one, because you were going in between being almost unhearable and very loud, like just in between a single sentence.
I will switch back in just a moment. Is it still doing okay now? As I'm trying to like figure out, is Discord like going to do this thing right?
I don't think it's going to do it right, because like now you're sounding a little bit louder, but then at other times you literally sound like you're talking from the other side of the room, like just a moment ago, like when you were talking about making that into a meme. Like I was sitting there getting progressively more and more aggravated, because it would be like this dude, he'd be like, yeah, I think it would be nice if it turned into a meme, because that would be really funny, and I think it would be hilarious if we were. And I was like, damn, dude, it sounds like he's like flying around the room or something like that. But anyways, I mean, it's good. Like the audio quality.
Well, here's the catch though. I don't have a stand for this mic yet, and I'm currently holding it handheld to test it out.
Oh.
And I think what might be happening is I'm slightly moving it away, slightly moving it toward my mouth. And I don't think it's enough to like really make a big difference, but apparently it is. So once I get a stand for it, it will probably be much better. And also, I got to be able to get the gain settings just right. So it's actually a very high-end mic, believe it or not. I saw Robert say, "What a crappy mic!"
Yeah, I saw that. I was
it's
like,
just a crappy operator right now. It's just a crappy operator. I don't know what I'm doing with it yet, but sooner or later, I'll get it figured out. And it's going to sound really good when it's over with. Like, so much crispier than the old mic, I think.
Man, maybe so. But for now, man, it's rough. I mean, it's really rough. But with that, I hope that does address the whole microphone thing, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Marion Deemert, who puts in a $20 donation and says, LSA, Slav Ukraine, and F Russia.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Jenna Tolls. I like the return to form. But still, I'm sorry, actually, Marion Deemert. I'm sorry, I was reading the last one. Whoops. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Marion Deemert. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, Slav Ukraine, and F Russia. I mean, really, F them. You know what I mean? But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who helped make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again. And also, Matthew, I like how Shunaman said, I support the enforcer, but you're wrong about the Falklands thing. Okay, hear me out. Okay, because I know you're going to say that about the Falklands, but then when we go, okay, what about Hong Kong? You will probably say, Hong Kong is British. Return it to Britain. because what other argument is there to make? Yes, we want them to be a part of the oppressive Chinese. No, look, the British got the Falklands Islands. They own it. The Argentines tried to take it. They lost. Womp womp. People got to live with it. It's a British island through and through. Has been since 1833. It's not going to change. And it really has been ever since 1765, because that's when the first British settlement was there. And the only time that this island was ever documented in Argentine history was in 1690, when Argentine and I believe it was even Peruvian fishing vessels were passing through the area, and they noted that there were some islands here and there was some pretty good game on the island, and that was it. That's all I could see according to history. And going off of history, the best people who have the claim to the island are the French and the British. So sorry to the Argentines watching if you have like this very strong belief in the Islas Malvinas being part of Argentina. I'd have to disagree. Historically, it would most likely be French or British, and it ended up being British. And so with that, I hope that does address that at least the best I can. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Howard Turgell, who puts in a $20 donation. And huge shout out to Howard as well for that generous support. He said, is South Korea no longer North Korea's present agenda?
Yes, that is actually true, Howard Turgell. According to the information that we have, the North Koreans, I believe it was at the beginning of this year, actually dropped their claim on reunification of the Korean Peninsula. And so, from what we understand, the reunification of the Korean Peninsula is no longer a serious concern of the North Korean government. And so they are moving on into a whole bunch of other interesting avenues, like the one they're in right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one. Also, I saw some people saying that it was a 99-year lease in Hong Kong. That's actually right. That's why it ended up going back to China. But the reality is that the British could have argued for an extension of the lease, which they did try to do. Well, the Chinese refused to extend the lease because, once again, Chinese national security and Chinese border interests trump everything, including possible economic benefits of Hong Kong remaining a British colony. And so for that reason, they said, no, we are not extending the lease. Hong Kong will become a part of mainland China, again, under a one China, two systems idea. And so the British said, all right, we don't really have any ground to work with here. We can't really fight for Hong Kong because, you know, the lease was the lease. It was a 99-year lease, so it goes back to China. And then everything went to hell. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. But y'all are right. It was a 99-year lease. Britain didn't have it permanently. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, I saw Fayuma ask about the new mic here. What type is it? He says, is it a shotgun mic or a kidney or something else? It's actually a condenser mic. The mic that we're using, that the Enforcer's still talking on, is actually a dynamic mic. It's a Shure MV7, I believe. And they're good mics, but the only problem is it really doesn't cut out a lot of room noise. So that's the problem with that. So this one, I hope, will fix that problem. Once it's on a stand, it should be much better than it is right now, hopefully. But with that, we're moving on to our next super chat, which goes to Marion Deemert, who puts in a combined $40 donation between two separate super chats. So huge shout out to Marion for that support, and sadly, no comments to address. And also, I think Marion already left for the night, but huge thanks to you, Marion, and hopefully you hear this tomorrow. And we, of course, appreciate you supporting the channel. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say thank you so much as well, Marion Deemer, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because while you didn't throw in a comment, that support is always massively appreciated and helps this channel to keep on running. And so I gotta say thank you massively once again for the support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are about to be moving on to the next one. But also, Matthew, could you please, pretty please, change back to the Shure, man? Because you were getting so quiet, it's hard to hear you, at least on my end.
Is it better now?
That is way too loud. Like,
Man, I'm switching over. Once I read this next one, I'll switch over. Just drag the next one out for a minute so that way I can switch.
Got you. And so with that, we are on to the next one. This is a great one to drag it out on. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so this one goes to Andy L, who puts in a $20 donation, and huge shout out to Andy as well for always supporting the channel. And he said, lots of news, and please take a question from the chat, and long live the LSA.
And thank you so much for the support, Andy L, and it has been lots of news. It was an insanely high amount of news today, and not only did we get to cover the news of the war in Ukraine, we got to cover the ongoing tensions rising in the Middle East, the tensions rising in the Koreas, and the failed coup that occurred in Bolivia today. That is a one kind of news, a kind of spread of news that we very rarely get to cover on this channel. There are so many things going on in this world right now as we're talking. Currently, there are massive, major situations going on in Mexico. For example, we're hearing that Mexico City may actually be without water here within the next 2 months, completely bone dry. We are also hearing that at the exact same time, there's ongoing economic situations in Panama, with the Panama Canal and Lake Gatun drying up due to what can best be described as climate change within the region. We also got to hear about the failed coup in Bolivia, and at the exact same time, Ecuador is still fighting the cartels, which almost attempted to completely destroy the Ecuadorian government not too long ago. We also know that at the exact same time, there is a civil war going on in South Sudan. Well, not South Sudan, sorry, correction, inside of Sudan. And we also know of Chinese developments ongoing inside of East Africa at the moment. Not only that, but within the areas of of Western Africa, currently the French and in the small part, the Russians, are currently fighting warlords in the area so France can continue to assert its control that it almost had in colonial times over the areas of Western Africa. At that exact same time, in the area of the Middle East, not only is there a civil war going on in Syria and Yemen, but Israel is preparing to invade Lebanon. Turkey is currently involved in military intervention in northern Syria and fighting an ongoing uprising from the Kurds living within southeastern Syria, but Iran is also attempting to fund and support proxy groups that are fighting against the Israelis. Afghanistan is about to go to war with everyone surrounding them, and they're about to go to war with Iran, Pakistan, China, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan over border disputes and multiple different things that have been going on in between the Afghan government and all of the surrounding nations in that area. And at the same time, Pakistan and India are finding a little bit of common ground on making sure to stop Chinese encroachment into the area of Kashmir, while at the same time not being able to find common ground on really anything else at the exact same time, with tensions in the border region still being fairly high. Meanwhile, in the area of Myanmar, or what people used to call formerly Burma, there is a civil war ongoing there in between the military junta and the separatists, well, not really the separatists, but the rebels who are attempting to overthrow the military junta that is currently in charge at the moment. The Chinese are then, at the same time, trying to push their claims on Arunachal Pradesh, which is a part of the Republic of India, and trying to claim that area, while at the same time trying to also find a way to assert their control over Taiwan, and also over, I believe it's the Sapporo Islands south of Japan. Identically, the Philippines are still dealing with uprisings within some areas of the country, particularly the southern area around Davao, and we also hear that there are still some major economic changes really just going on within Southeastern Asia as a whole, with the tensions still going on in the Korean Peninsula and a war going on in Ukraine with never-ending tensions rising in between Russia and NATO. And that's really everything that's going on in the world right now. That would be a major thing to talk about. But we only get to talk about a very small handful, really most of the time just the war in Ukraine. But tonight we got to talk about really every single corner of the globe, which is really something. And I got to thank you, Andy L., for massively appreciating all of the news, the lots of news that we got to cover tonight. And I also thank you so much for wanting us to take a live chat. So with that, long live the Lee Spring Army. And what live chat do we have, Matthew? Sponsored by none other than Andy L.
All right, and the live chat question this time is going to go to Jorge Lopez, who says, what's your opinion about the ICJ declaring the arrest warrant for Shoigu, Gerasimov, and others?
And now, Matthew, you are incredibly quiet as well on the Shure. But
is it better now?
It's getting a little bit better. Can you reread that one more time?
Jorge says, what's your opinion about the ICJ declaring the arrest warrant for Shoigu, Gerasimov, and others?
I would say it doesn't really mean much of anything. I don't really put a lot of merit into what the ICC does, the International Criminal Court. And so going off of that, I don't really put much stock into it. They put out arrest warrants for the Israeli officials as well, and then that got them a lot of ire. They just really throw out arrest warrants these days like party favors, and then no one really enforces them either, so they're pretty much worthless. So with that, I hope that does address that at least the best I can, in my opinion. And thank you once again, Andy L., for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one is going to go to Vector. And Vector put in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Vector, for that support. He said, from Red Hook, Brooklyn, LSA, and thoughts on if the U.S. would have to consider a preemptive strike on North Korea's nukes.
One would think that a preemptive strike might be within a U.S. consideration. If we're talking about a U.S. preemptive nuclear strike, no. The U.S. Nuclear doctrine does not allow for preemptive strikes to happen. So we would not be able to conduct one without changing our doctrine to a preemptive first strike doctrine, which would be extremely dangerous and very escalatory, not only against North Korea, but against everyone in the world. However, a conventional preemptive strike on North Korea's nuclear arsenal, if we have information on where they are at the moment and where to strike them, could be viable. We could do something like that and completely neuter a North Korean nuclear response. But the problem is that currently there is a North Korean ballistic missile submarine that is in service somewhere out there in the world that we would not be able to account for unless if it was in port. So we would have to wait for that submarine to be in port to be able to destroy all of North Korea's nuclear weapons abilities, and we would have to hope on 100% success, because if we destroy North Korea's nuclear abilities, but that one submarine or one launcher survives, it could spell certain disaster, at least for one American city or multiple American cities inside the United States. So I would have to say, yes, we could consider something like that on a conventional level, but we would have to make sure that that plan would be executed flawlessly and there would be very little to no chance of possible error. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And thank you so much once again, Vector, for the incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also thank you for being from Red Hook in Brooklyn. Where is Red Hook in Brooklyn? It's right here. Wow, that's actually really close to Governor's Island and the Statue of Liberty. Ain't that neat?
Governor.
Oh, hello there. But let's see what it looks like down here.
Oh, look. It's not a Soviet bloc.
Consolidated bus transit. Huh, that's cool. Anyways, dude, that do be a Soviet commie block up there with a big water tower on top of the building. But dang. This place doesn't look that bad. I mean, like, compared to Philadelphia, I don't think anything can get as bad as Philadelphia in this part of the country. No lie. Like, oh, actually, this street's really nice. Look at that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is. That's a modern.
Yeah, I like this. Actually, this is a nice place. I like it. So, hello to Red Hook, Brooklyn. It's good to know that you're here watching tonight. And also, look, there's a grain terminal right here, Matthew. Oh, grain from Ukraine. It could come right there, be dropped off at Red Hook. Americans buy grain, eat grain, love grain. But, man, look at that. The Catacombs of Greenwood. Damn, that's a big cemetery right there, no lie. Dang, that thing's almost as big as freaking LaGuardia. Wait, hang on, that's not LaGuardia. Where the hell's LaGuardia? Oh, wait, it's up. That's John F. Kennedy. Wait a minute, LaGuardia's up here. Yeah, there it is. There's LaGuardia Airport, where some of the best air traffic control radio recordings in the nation are made. They're made here at LaGuardia and down at JFK, because the New Yorker air traffic control guys are some of the sassiest people at air traffic control, so the stuff that comes out of there is always a classic. But still, wonderful to see. Also, man, look at this Emirates A380 at JFK.
Wow. Now that's art right there. I like that.
Man, that's something, man. That reminds you of Microsoft Flight Simulator, doesn't it?
It does, but I don't have that DLC.
Aw. Well, anyway, anyways, with that, dang, dude, they're like building a massive extension to the airport as well. Look at that.
Man, is that building or is that just junk?
No, that's construction going on. Look at that.
Oh, they're working hard out there.
Man, they're up there on that tiny post and they're working hard. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for being from Red Hook, Brooklyn. And I hope I was able to answer your question incredibly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and by the way, I put up a poll. I said, did Matt's new mic sound good when the levels were somewhat balanced? 82% said yes, and 18% said no. So I played it back while the Enforcer was talking just a moment ago. It sounds like it's pretty good, but I don't think it's coming through Discord good for some reason. So I'll have to play with that off air, but I'm happy with the way it sounds to me. I think it sounds good, like the 82%. But of course, I got to get a stand for it because holding a mic and trying to stream is definitely not practical. But it served its purpose. I had to test it out to see if it worked, and it sounds pretty good. It sounds better than this one, honestly. And this one right here has never been able to really like meet the needs I really needed it for, to be honest. And on the video, I really didn't cut down the video either. Too much echo noise in the background as well. So maybe the new one will fix it, but we'll have to see. But moving on to our next super chat, we have a $20 donation from Destiny Edgerton. And thank you very much to Destiny for always supporting the channel. And she said, can Russia afford to feed and pay North Korean soldiers, or will they starve in the field with the Russians?
The North Koreans do not get paid. Who the hell thought they were getting paid? Like, Destiny, come on, we're talking about North Korea. It is a truly Juche Marxist-Leninist society. They don't get paid. They just work. They just toil for the service of the state. So they're not going to ever get paid, and the Russians are not going to pay them either. They're just going to be working for the North Korean armed forces like they would have normally. But feeding them. That's a good question. I think that the Russians will probably have some sort of an agreement that they'll feed the North Korean soldiers, but they're not going to pay them. That would be up to the North Koreans if they get paid anything at all, which they probably don't. So going off of that, I hope that does address that well, Destiny, because who the hell said anything about paying them? It's like literally putting slave labor out there on the front lines. No North Koreans ever get paid. Like, they just get stuff. I think they get credits if they get anything, and if they don't get credits, I think they're just given an allowance based off of their spot in the cast. So if they're in like the favored cast, they get like the best stuff. They get really a whole lot of stuff compared to your average North Korean. If you're in the wavering cast, then you don't really get that much, but you still get an okay amount. And then if you're in the hostile cast, which is the very bottom, you get really nothing. You just work in the labor camps until you either die or something along those lines. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for support, Destiny, and helping this channel keep it running. And man, the guy sat there and turned into the Squidward. The weekend I said, who said anything about paying him? But anyways, thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next one here is going to go to Historic Tasmania, and he puts in a $15 donation. And huge shout out to Historic as well. He said, kangaroos, let's see, kangaroos 8, not protected in Australia, and they outnumber people. The Aborigine eat them for century, and I assure you, it's a nicer meat. Long live LSA, and thank you guys. Go to Hobart on map.
And thank you so much for the support, and we will go to Hobart. I know where Hobart is. It is the capital of Tasmania. Boom, baby! Hobart, right here. Look at that. And I gotta say, what a beautiful place. You know what I call Bart's Hobart. But let's drop down and see. Let's drop down the Cat Fiddle Arcade.
Arcade, man, that sounds actually kind of fun.
It's not like a Western arcade. It's more like a shopping mall kind of a thing.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh hell no, that's not that fun. Spending money, that's not fun at all.
See, what else do we got? We got Penny's Bakery. That actually Specsavers. We have, what else do we have? We have Mecca Maxima. All right. And then what do we have here? We have Meyer. Country Road, Take Me Home. To the place I belong, West Virginia. But anyways, moving on from that. We also have Gorman. And we have...
Man, I gotta say, the store names around here are just not creative at all. Like, there was one back there on the back that said Lush. Then there was one that said Mecca. And then there was the other one right there that said Gorman. And it's like, there's just one names on it that make no sense. It's like, what even the hell is these places?
Man, and then we got the Body Shop, and it ain't about cars. Like, it's like, what the hell is this? But hey, Hobart
Body Shop?
Yeah, right there.
The hell is that?
Bro, you go in there, oh, look, it looks like they have, anyways, the Body Shop. It's a shop for bodies. The Body Shop.
That sounds weird.
It does sound kind of weird. But, oh, the Hobart Convict Penitentiary. What we got here, fellas?
That's a pen?
Hang on, let me...
They got him locked in there with a mechanic shop?
Hold up, it's right around here. So... Oh, this is it. This is the pen, my boy.
Damn, that's the pen?
Yep,
that's the gift shop, man. That's not the pen.
That's the pen. That's the pen, bro. I ain't lying. You think I'm lying? I'll show you the pen. We clicking on it right here. Bro, that the pen.
Damn, man. You don't want to get locked up in there. Damn, you're not coming out.
Dude, I think there's this thing inside of this building called the Slender Man, and it eats your organs after they put you in this room and turn off the light. But let's see. So this is a historic building, by the way. It's not used as an actual penitentiary anymore. It's just like a museum of what a penitentiary was. But this is the whole building right here, Matthew. Look at that. That looks like a fun place to be. Dang, dude, they got this man posing. Like, look at that.
Man, what the hell?
Man, he be
His pants are
styling
too
on...
big. What the hell?
Dude, he be styling on them hoes. They be walking by, he'd be like, I'm in prison, mate. And I like it.
Look at that bed, though. Look at that bed.
Dude, that thing, they called it the rack. Like, it was no good rack. And then they got this little culvert right here, so that way you can just think about things. Oh, wait a minute, there he is. He be styling. Look at that. But let's see here. What else do we have here in this amazing building? Let's see. We got this empty chapel here. I'm guessing it's for the prisoners. Oh, we got this fella. Oh, he do be styling. Look at him. Everyone's wearing the same thing in this prison for some reason.
And they're all standing in the corner like they've been terrified.
I think they are because they got a noose. Hey, let's give up the noose. Man, I'm telling you what, man. It's one hell of a place around here. It looks fun, actually. I would like to check this place out one time. But Hobart be looking fun. And also, I know that kangaroos are not endangered, but for some reason in America, we classify them as an endangered species, which I find to be a little goofy, because it's like calling emus an endangered species. I think the reason why we don't want the meat imported is because Americans would probably get a craving for kangaroo meat, and then we would have this massive demand that would always be existing in Australia for the kangaroos to be industrially slaughtered for our consumption, and that's probably something that America's like, we don't really want that, because that would be a bit of a bad look. But I don't really know why we ban it in America, but I wish we could have some kangaroo meat, because it does sound pretty good, historic Tasmanian. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now, getting to run this stream and talk about all of these incredible things like Newtown and Hobart Town and Ridges Hobart and Mount Stewart and West Hobart and North Hobart and then South Hobart, which is probably it's right down here. And then we got the Cascades Female Factory. Is this where they make women, Matthew?
Women?
Yeah, it says Cascades Female Factory. I guess this is where they make the women's.
You got me on that.
So, damn, dude, this is a desolate place to be making women. Yeah, see, look, it says Cascades Female Factory.
I mean, that name is unfortunate.
What the hell is this? So this is where Australia makes women. I didn't think it looked this bleak, Matthew. I'm not going to lie. Like, it looks pretty freaking bleak.
What the hell is it for real, though? Why they got statues of women up out there?
And not just any women, it's pregnant women. So this was apparently like a legit women factory. I have no clue what the hell this thing really is. Could someone from Australia explain what a women factory is? Because I'd have no clue whatsoever what a women factory would be. Like, what its actual real purpose would be. Let's see. I'm trying to see if I can find anything here. I'm not seeing anything. Oh, wait, hang on. Oh, it's a prison. It's a prison. Australian convict sites.
Oh, it's a prison. Why'd they call it a factory then?
I don't know. It's a really bizarre thing.
I mean, I think I have an idea of why they're calling it that, but I'm hoping that's probably not the meaning behind it.
You know, let me go Google this off screen. Hang on. It says women factory workers. We just want a women factory, all right? Simply put. Let's see. Okay, so we have the answer. Female factories, or women factories, were based on British bridewells, prisons, and workhouses. They were for women convicts transported to the penal colonies of New South Wales and Van Diemen's Island, which ended up becoming Tasmania. And so, let's see. This spanned a period, the factories were called factories because each site was a site of production. The women produced spun wool and flax in all the factories. In the main factories, other work was undertaken such as sewing, stock knitting, and straw plaiting. Hard labor included rock breaking and oakum picking. Let's see, women were sent to female factories while awaiting assignment to a household or awaiting childbirth or weaning or as punishment. Well, that is freaking dark. Like, it's like, that doesn't sound that great. So yeah, now we have an answer for what a female factory or a women factory is. But that is a little bit bizarre. I'm not gonna lie, pretty dark. To be, I mean, did they have a child care place by the women factory? Okay, this is just getting too much, but still, thank you, Historic Test Media, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Thomas Martin, who puts in a $30 donation. And thank you very much, Thomas, for the support. Of course. He said, thank you for doing this. Slav Ukraine, LSA, 100%. And check out Grand Forks, North Dakota, 58201.
And here we are, Grand Forks, North Dakota. Right on the border of Minnesota. Hey, Matthew, look, there's Minneapolis. I bet you there's a whole bunch of cool places in Minneapolis. I don't know. Blaine would be a pretty cool one. But anyways, moving on from that and getting back up to Grand Forks before we get too distracted. We can't get that distracted. Let's take a look at Grand Forks. So let's see here. We got a nice rail yard in the center of town. Do y'all have a historic railroad station? Oh, dude, they have a existent turntable. Ain't that neat?
Man, that is pretty neat.
A holdover from a different time. But still, ain't this something? I mean, this is pretty neat. Oh, wait, here we go. Here's downtown. So let's go check out downtown. Listen, wow, dude. Dang, this is nice.
That's very clean. Like, no trash anywhere.
Man, but, what the hell does this mean?
What the hell? Man, what in the world?
Man, there's apparently some freaky people in Grand Forks. Moving on down. Let's see what else we got. We got that Thai hot. Thai food is pretty good, by the way. Did y'all know that the Thai restaurants are actually subsidized a little bit by the Thai government? I bet a lot of y'all didn't know that. But a lot of them actually are subsidized. They actually are allowed grants by the Thai government because it's an attempt by the government of Thailand to promote Thai culture around the world, which is why there's so many Thai restaurants in America, because a lot of them get grants. And so a lot of Thai immigrants will get those grants, and then they'll just cook the food from their countries. From their home country, which is a pretty good way to make business. Pretty cool fact. But anyways, moving on from that, what else do we have here in the town of Grand Forks? We got that Bonzer's Sandwich Pub. And dude, that bulldog be looking like that one on Tom and Jerry when it went, oh, me. It's like in the process of saying that right now.
He said, what'd you say?
Bro, that thing said, I'm a Peaky Blinder, governor, or something like that. But
does it sound better now?
Is it better now? But anyways, we got Harry's Steakhouse. Hopefully that steak ain't hairy. And then we also have Hugo's Pure Market, as opposed to that filthy market down the street. And then we got Gate City Bank for a better way of life. And let's see, what else do we have around here? We got Edward Jones Investments. But all in all, downtown Grand Forks is actually really nice. I'm not kidding. It's actually a really beautiful place. And you can also see a little bit of, what river is this? The Red River. That's actually pretty cool. I've heard a lot about the Red River before in the past. But still, I've got to say, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. As I look around to try and find any interesting industry that might exist in the city. The Philadelphia Macaroni Company. 1.8 stars.
Yikes. That macaroni ain't any good.
So it's all truck drivers bitching about how long it takes to load the trucks, dude. It's like, okay. It's like, all right.
What about the macaroni, though? Is it any good?
Philly Mac should be renamed Silly Mac with all clowns running place. Poor management, mismanagement,
coming in hot.
authoritarians everywhere, even with no authority, lied to upon hiring about scheduling, and management is two-faced. If you crave a chaotic circus in your everyday, this will definitely be the place for you. This is one of those.
I had no idea the drama was going down at the macaroni factory. Like, it's going down.
Bro, Philadelphia macaroni, more like silly macaroni. But anyways, this is one of those companies that has no tolerance for drivers, and they think we are livestock. Very bad company. My appointment time was for 6 p.m. I showed up at 5:45. At 7:30, they called me and said to go and get in tomorrow morning at 7. Arrived at 7. The clock is at 8:30. I am still waiting on the street. The company has no toilet or a room for drivers. I parked at dock at 8:45, finished at 10:55. Is it worth it to wait 17 hours? Everyone has the same complaints about this place. Dude, we're getting in on that Philadelphia Macaroni Company drama. I mean, this is that absolute juice that you get from Philadelphia Macaroni Company. Huge shout out to Grand Forks, North Dakota and the Philadelphia Macaroni Company. Absolutely cooking up that macaroni and cooking up that company drama. But what else do we have out here? Biorefinery. Do they have good reviews? They don't have any reviews. How about North Dakota Mill and Elevator? 3.9. What's the juice? I don't know where the good reviews are coming from, but if you want to load wheat mitts, this place ain't worth a damn. This is a terrible, terrible place to load at. Whoever runs this place should be ashamed of themselves for running such a bad operation. Who else has heat to say? Terrible! They took over 5 hours to get me loaded, and for the first 1 to 2 hours, there were a couple of more trucks, but after that, I was by myself. I guess that's it for me and this place. Dude, honestly, a lot of these truck drivers are throwing flames at the industry out here at Grand Forks. I mean, like, it's like, dang. I mean, they throwing shade, Matthew.
Man, they're throwing the shade.
But still, beyond that, I gotta say, thank you so much for the support and wanting us to take a look at this incredible place, Thomas Martin. The place at Grand Forks, North Dakota. And I got to thank you so much for the support and allowing us to take a look. Downtown's beautiful. Appears the industry's running into some trouble out there. Philadelphia Macaroni Company really running into trouble. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And thank you for being one of those folks who has decided to support this channel and help us to keep this thing running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we would not be able to be here and have this thing running right now. And so with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Kamba Pilau, I believe is how it's said. Hopefully I'm not butchering it. But they put in a $15 donation, and thank you very much for the support. They said, I am Bolivian, and the current pro-Cuba, pro-Russian government staged a self-coup in order to distract the world from the problems that Bolivia has had in the past year.
And I thank you so much for your support. And also really cool to know that we actually have Bolivian viewers here. And I thank you so much for the support, Kampa Palau, for helping this channel to keep on running. And I also have to say that is very interesting here. I did not know that about the Bolivian government, and I will be trying to do a little bit more research about their governmental situation and where they stand on the world stage. Also, one other thing that I gotta say is a little bit weird to me is that why in the world was La Paz built on the western side of the Andes mountain range where it's desertous instead of the eastern side where it's more luscious? Why was that? Why was that? Can someone tell me? Can someone cue me in? But still, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to Wyatt Logan. And a huge shout out to Wyatt, as always, for that support. And Wyatt put in a 10 and said, hi, enforcers. And honestly, I got bad news in real life from the doc on Tuesday. And to cope, I use humor. And I thought of what could be worse. And a paternity suit from Chris's mom. And in a bad spot, the LSA put a smile on my face. And small world. And also, Wyatt, I'm sorry to hear about the bad news. Obviously, we don't know what it is, but I assume it's not good. So, very sorry to hear that, and I hope you can stay in good spirits. But, Enforcer, what say you?
And I hate to hear that as well, and I hope that things continue to improve for you behind the scenes, Wyatt Logan, but we are always happy to know that we were able to bring smiles to people's faces and distract them from the dangers of the world by telling you all about the dangers of the world, but saying it in a way that kind of puts a smile or at least a laugh out there for some folks. We try our hardest to be able to do that every single day. We're probably the only news channel out there that does that, but we are more than happy to do it and to make sure that y'all are able to hear the news, but also at least get a little bit of a laugh out of it, because why cry when you can laugh instead? And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. And Wyatt said it's a spinal issue.
Unfortunately, you got a little bit of that.
Yeah, I actually do. Wyatt, if you're talking about anything that has to do with scoliosis, I actually have scoliosis as well. So I would completely understand some of the issues that you're going through, because having scoliosis can kind of hurt at times. It actually can cause a bit of pain. And I used to believe that that was not true in the past, but it is starting to become a little bit more true as I'm getting older, that sometimes some pretty bad pain will come from my back. But that is a part of life, and that is something that I have to deal with. But hopefully, whatever it is with your spine, it's nothing too severe. But still, thank you so much for the support, Wyatt Logan. We are more than happy to help give you a happy moment every single day to come to at the end of every stream. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Carla Morris, who says, the storage and maintenance of weapons in Russia and China seem to be questionable at best, and any chance they just swap old and broken stockpiles.
There is a pretty good chance that they do that, Carla. And also there's an equally high chance that those stockpiles are probably poorly maintained, and it's probably all pretty bad off, probably a lot of duds, because there's no real humidity protection or anything for that matter for most of those munitions. So I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. But still, I got to thank you massively for the support, Carla, and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you do help to make this thing possible day in and day out. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to Kamba Pilau once again, who puts in a $10 donation.
Hey!
And I think they said the same thing. I think it was the same thing. Let's see. Let me make sure. And it was. And they said, thanks, LSA. And thank you very much once again for bringing that to our attention and also supporting the channel as well. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you, Kampa Palau, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for sharing that with us a second time. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've got one from Scott Kemp, who puts in a 10 and says, you two are awesome at a time like this. And thank you, Scott. He said, thanks, and still on number 3 in donations.
Hey, and thank you so much for your support, Scott Kemp. And thank you for your 3rd super chat to this channel ever. Of course, support like that seems to be something that, you know, it doesn't seem like much to some people. You know, people are like, oh, I'm only on number 3, or I'm only throwing in a $5 super chat. But that's not how we look at it behind the scenes. Any support is better than no support. We say that about Ukraine. We say that about this channel. And we are massively appreciative to everyone. Whether the support be large, whether the support be small, we are greatly appreciative. And I got to thank you so much, Scott Kemp, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because folks like you do help to make this thing possible day in and day out. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Plant Lord, who puts in a 10. And sadly, I think they left a little bit early.
Oh.
And also, by the way, if Plant Lord is hearing this tomorrow, your super chat was coming up in the list. So we didn't miss it. It was just simply coming up. But they said, do you think France would be the first country to join Ukraine?
It would either be France or it'd be Poland, but really I think it'd probably be France. So I'd have to say, yeah, it's like I'd have to agree. But still, thank you so much for the support, Plant Lord, and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for being the Lord of the Plants. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Rangers Rule, who puts in a 10 and says, thank you for the hard work, and take a question from the chat.
Hey, and thank you so much, Rangers Rule, for the support and enjoying our hard work. We put in a lot of hard work on this channel every single day. It's long and it's hard and it's tiresome, and I'm starving right now and I'm fiending. But nevertheless, we are more than happy to do this every single day. I would rather be starving and fiending and tired and worn out than not running this show. We always take this as a high honor to be able to tell you all about the news of what's going on day by day. And I thank you so much for enjoying that Rangers Rule and supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. And so with that, we will take a question from the live chat. And what do we got, Matthew?
And this question goes to Sammy. And Sammy says, I heard Hezbollah received leftover U.S. arms from Afghanistan, and any confirmation?
Yes, they actually did. From what we understand, it was mostly small arms, though. M4 carbines, things like that. It wasn't anything big, but technically they did. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support, Rangers Rule, and sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one is going to go to Papa Kenny's Workshop, who puts in a 10, along with O City Hardcore Beats. He's got those sick beats, you know what I mean?
Hey!
And he puts in a 12. And Papa Kenny nor Hardcore Beats left a comment, but huge shout out to both of you for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And a huge shout out to the Boltiches, Papa Kenny's Workshop, and O City Hardcore Beats for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Both of y'all make this channel possible for us to run this thing day by day. And if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And so with that, I thank y'all massively once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. Because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. So with that, thank y'all both once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Monsieur Gaston, who puts in a 10 and says, excellent work tonight, gentlemen. And thank you, Monsieur, for the support and also the kind words. He said, hit me with that marmot, please.
Oh, man, we got to hit him with that marmot, baby. Let's hit him with that marmot. Man, we gotta get that Marmot out here, man. We gotta get Alan. It's the Marmot,
Hello there,
baby.
Governor. How you doing tonight, Governor? Is it better now? And it wasn't better.
Aw, man. If only I could rip off another thumbnail format. Aw, man. I'm starting to run thin. Aw, man. Anyway.
Try all the thumbnails you want, Governor. It ain't working.
Aw, man. I make fun of everyone for putting out shitty thumbnails, and then I start to copy their shitty thumbnails. Aw, man.
I'm sorry, Governor. I thought you were the only original YouTuber. What happened to the originality? Where'd it go? It went to the wayside, didn't it? Oh, it just went all over yonder.
Aw, man. I'm gonna start harassing and doxing people here soon if the subscriber numbers don't climb quickly. Aw, man.
Is it better now?
I got that way off sync right there. Like, I had to try and zoom into the bar really quickly. But still, thank you so much for the support, Monsieur Gaston. And thank you for enjoying this channel and supporting it and helping it to keep on running. We love to see Alan the Marmot on screen. And sadly, Alan passed away about 3 months ago from digestive system failure. It was incredibly unfortunate. He choked on that hot dog and died. But I have to say that it's wonderful to know that we can still talk about Alan's portrait in great fondness and memory, and get to talk about Alan the Marmot here on the stream. And by the way, Alan the Marmot ain't dead, y'all. Like, I'm just joking about that. But still, thank you so much for the support, Monsieur Gaston, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now and keep running this channel and keep covering news. As Aiden C says, what the F am I actually watching?
You're watching late night insanity. You're entering the twilight zone slowly but surely.
Real trap shit. Oh man, it's hilarious actually. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for support, Monsieur Gaston. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Rotor Max, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Rotor Max, for that support. He said, "Thanks for all the news and support for Ukraine."
And thank you, Rotomax, for appreciating all of our support in news about Ukraine, because we put in a lot of effort, and we are always massively appreciative of folks enjoying the hard work and efforts that go into making sure that news, not only in video, but also in stream form, continues to persist day by day. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Wellness LSA Latvia, who puts in a $10 donation. He said very historically, oh man, the LSA is so good, so great. LSA baby.
Now that would be good enough for a hit piece to actually come out there, right there. I never said that they suck. It'll be something like that, but still, Wellness LSA at Latvia. I love to hear it, and I thank you so much for the support and being a part of the Lee Spring Army all the way from Latvia. Really cool to know. And of course, aw, man, Russia gonna get beasted on by the Latvians. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next ones go to LSA Master Sergeant Figment. And a huge shout out to you, LSA Master Sergeant, for the support. We got two of them, two $5 supports. And the first one says, with North Korea entering the war, which Western country is likely to respond, and what will that response look like in Slav Ukraine?
It either would be France or America, I believe. I don't think Poland would be able to use that as a justifiable reason to get involved in the war. France and America are world players, however, and we would be able to get involved directly inside of Ukraine. So I would say it would either be France or America, LSA Master Sergeant Figment. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support, LSA Master Sergeant Figment. I thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running and making this channel possible, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And also have a safe time in Florida. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And the next one that he put in says, if North Korea obtains long-range nuclear capability, will the U.S. have an obligation to intervene and go to war, and what would stop us?
we wouldn't necessarily have an obligation. Actually, it would be a lot more dangerous to go to war at that point than it would be afterwards. So I would say that we don't have an obligation, but it certainly would make the situation a lot more tense and a lot more severe in the area around North Korea. Really, in the entirety of East Asia, the situation would become a lot more severe. No, it wouldn't start a war, but it would be a much more dangerous world we would be living in at that point. And so with that, I hope that does address it well. And also, the one thing that would be stopping us would be North Korea's nuclear weapons. And that's the big concern at the moment. And so with that, thank you so much once again, LSA Master Sergeant Figment, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. But it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help us to keep this channel running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to CK Bold, who puts in the number 5, and says, take a live chat question. And we shall. And thank you very much, CK Bold, for that support. And this question right here is going to go to, let's see here, looking for one that we haven't really taken yet. Let's see here. This one goes to K. Lamar, who says, do you think things will turn into a nuclear conflict if North Korea attacks South Korea and if NATO gets involved in Ukraine?
It's possible. I'm not going to rule it out at that point. It's actually a pretty high possibility, in my opinion, that tactical nuclear weapons would be used at least a small amount of times, and in the worst case scenario, it would become an intercontinental ballistic missile exchange, which would pretty much be an apocalypse for the large part. Although a lot of people misunderstand how bad it would be. Like, everyone wouldn't die instantly. Actually, a lot of people would live. But about 1 in every 3 people would die. It would be the biggest single mass casualty event in world history. Modern civilization would cease to exist as people know it, but a lot of people would survive. But then another third would die in really the first year, I believe it would be. So then only a third would be left. So while there's 300 million people in America right now, only about 100 million people would come out of that nuclear exchange alive about a year later. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And thank you, CK Bull, for sponsoring a live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Adam McLean, who put in a 5 and said, if I could afford it, I would give this channel $1 million.
Dang. $1 million? Adam McLean, we are not deserving of $1 million. That is crazy. Exuberant amount of money. But I do have to say, thank you though for saying that. That is incredibly kind of you. But support, it's not about the money, Spider-Man. It's like, it really isn't about the money. Of course, we have to make money to be able to do this and keep this running. And you know, keep this channel going, because this is our job. But it isn't really all about the money at the end of the day. It's really about doing something we enjoy. And whether we were making an exorbitantly high amount of money every single year, millions of dollars every year, or if we were just making $40,000 a year, which would be, I believe, median income here in the state of Alabama. I believe that may be a little bit below median income at this point, but anyways, if we were making 40,000 or millions a year, we would still be doing this because we love doing this. It's an amazing job. It's an amazing thing that we get to do. And I do thank you so much for the support, man, Adam McLean, and saying such a kind thing, but it's not about the money. It's about getting the news out to y'all and getting to do something that we love. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, in our next super chat, this one is gonna go to, let's see here. It's gonna go to Dunes. He puts in a 5 and says, do you guys think the U.S. would reinstate the draft if the conflict escalates in Ukraine?
If we were involved, maybe, but no, if we were in peacetime, a draft would not be brought forward. We're not currently involved in really any conflict around the world, so a draft being put into effect, that would be unheard of. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Wonder Everchild, who puts in a 5, and thank you very much. They said, how many Domino's pizzas would America have to send to North Korea to get them to side with Ukraine? I would estimate 1 pizza per household. That's all it would take. Just send in, like, you know, like the companies that like to bring in the employees and do the little pizza party thing as a reward for being a hard worker for like a whole decade. If you did that in North Korea, you'd win over the whole country, the children and the dogs. Everybody would be on your side if you did that. So all it would take is a few. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, even Kim Jong-un would flip. Like, it'd be crazy. Man. Huh?
He's snitching.
Man, all I heard was, he's And then the mic cut out, and I was like, he's what? I was like, what is he doing? But still, thank you so much once again for support. I'd have to agree with Matthew. I was going to say 50, but really, one for every household. You'd win them over overnight. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, Wonder If a Child. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Now, everybody in the audience heard me on that, by the way. I think that was just you that didn't hear that. Unfortunately, I think you might be having audio problems on your end.
That can't be. That can't be. Hang on. 50, but really, we love doing this. It's an amazing... 1 second, hang on.
Let's get to the bottom of this.
Huh? Oh, no, it cut out. Listen to that. Here, I'll play it.
How many Domino's pizzas would America have to send to North Korea to get them to side with Ukraine? I would estimate 1
50.
pizza per household. That's all it would take. Just send in, like the companies that like to bring in the employees and do the little pizza party thing as a reward for being a hard worker for like a whole decade. If you did that in North Korea, you'd win over the whole country, the children and the dogs. Everybody would be on your side if you did that. So all it would take is a few. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, even Kim Jong-un would flip. It'd be crazy.
Man.
See, it cut out.
Oh, yeah, it cut out a little bit. I couldn't hear it.
Snitching. Man, you said, and then I was like, huh? I was like, what? I was like, dude.
That second snitching, though, it came through loud and clear.
Dude, man, it literally came in. It was like, he's snitching. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, we got it now. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to JGB, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, JGB, for that support. They said, could it be that North Korea also joins to kind of cover Putin's ass on the Japan, China, South Korea side of Russia?
Maybe so, but North Korea doesn't have any power projection ability really outside of North Korea. That's why it's bizarre to see them even sending anyone to Ukraine, because I don't know how they're really going to, like, logistically support them. So, yeah, they could, but it would really be well, then again, they're a nuclear power. So, yes, I think they actually could do that if you're considering the nuclear side of things and you're just going to the highest level of escalation. But on a conventional level, absolutely not. North Korea is a terrible country as far as their armed forces go. But yes, as far as nuclear deterrence, I guess so. But then again, the Russians have nuclear deterrence, so it's not like the North Koreans really adding anything to the picture there. So I would actually have to say, no, I don't think so. Going through the whole analysis by talking it out, I don't really think so, at least to me. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support. And I thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have one from Carla Morris, who puts in a 5 and said, sorry, y'all, I meant North Korea and Russia in my question.
Where was the question? Where was it?
See.
What happened?
I don't see one from Carla up here in the top.
I see one. The storage and maintenance of weapons in North Korea and China seem to be questionable at best. Any chance they swap old and broken stockpiles? So that's what it's really supposed to say. And yes, that is slightly possible, but now seeing the Chinese stance on North Korean-Russian relations, it never happened probably. Probably all the munitions that were sent from North Korea to Russia are North Korean in nature, and the Chinese probably never provided them with any munitions because there isn't really any inherent benefit to the Chinese actually supporting the Russians. To be entirely honest, they really get what they want whether the Russians win or lose. So why give them things and support them and end up losing your own munitions and maybe some money when you could just not and still get what you want in the end? And so with that, I hope that does address that well, looking at that in a second lens. And thank you, Carla Morris, for supporting this channel a second time. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, huge shout out to Stephen Fields, who put in a $5 donation. That's his 3rd ever super chat on the live stream. So a huge shout out to Stephen. And thank you very much for that support.
And a huge shout out to Steven. And I got to thank you so much for your 3rd super chat to this channel, because while you didn't throw in a comment, the support does help us to keep this thing running. And so with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Quantum Fighter, who puts in a $5 donation. And huge shout out to you, Quantum Fighter, for the support. He said, so you've laid out ridiculously dangerous Russia plus North Korea plus China threat. What do we, the West, do about it? And also, Matt's voice on Max Base tickles my girlfriend. Live question.
All right. Get it, man. Get it. But still, thank you so much for the support, Quantum Fight 8, helping this channel to keep on running. And to answer your question, The West, I actually covered this a little bit earlier on in stream, so I'll cover it again, but it'll be a little bit short. I believe that we should create a temporary united front with the Chinese to deal with the situation and openly condemn the Russians and North Koreans and cut them off from any possible financial or economic support in the future. That would really start to massively change their decision-making process. That's what I believe we should do because everyone has an interest in stopping what's happening right now from unfolding. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support, Quantum Fighter, and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this channel possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the live chat question here goes to the Noob Tube, who says, with this new development, I'm curious, how many actors will approach North Korea for that new long-range nuke tech themselves, for example, like Iran or the other bad groups like Special K?
Probably not that many, because the North Koreans, from what we know, haven't really given out a lot of their nuclear technology to anyone. They kind of keep it secret. So I don't think they're going to be passing around the Russian stuff either. And the Russians probably have made an agreement with the North Koreans that they won't as well, because that could pose a bunch of national security issues for the Russian Federation. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Rob Wilkes. He puts in a 5 on this one, and it says Putin might be hedging his bets in case China decides to annex eastern Russia and the energy it contains.
Possibly so, but I don't think so, because China doesn't seek to really extend its borders into eastern Russia, but they've never really made that a big thing where they're like, oh yes, we should take that back. They never have, and from what we know, they're probably never going to try and do anything about it. So I would have to say, to be quite honest, I don't think the Russians are that concerned about that. I don't think anyone's even considering that right now, because the only Chinese territorial claim that they have currently is in the Amur River, somewhere on one of these islands. That are literally just little marsh hellholes. But that's one of their claims, and that's the only one. So I don't think they have any other greater ideas of conquest of East Russia. But still, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And our next one here goes to Seeker Gather, who puts in a 5 and says, Lao Tzu said, there is no greater danger than underestimating your opponent.
That is true, and I believe it's Sun Tzu, not Lao Tzu, but it may be Lao Tzu, I'm not entirely sure, but still, I thank you so much for the support. And there is no greater danger than us underestimating your opponent. That's why America always overestimates everyone, and that's what we should do, but, you know, then when we talk about realistic things on this channel, you can start to say that there are some inherent flaws and weaknesses in their armed force, but you still ought to expect that they're going to go all out and match you in an actual conflict. But with that, I hope that does address that well. I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And let me go type in Lao Tzu. So I be damned, Matthew. Lao Tzu is actually completely different than Sun Tzu. I'm not even kidding. Like, Lao Tzu is actually a person.
I hope he is. Sounds like he's related to the other guy, though. His last name's Zhu.
Sun Tzu.
Oh.
Lao Tzu.
Yeah. No, that's lousy. Man, what the? Wait, is that a joke? Is that a real name or is that a joke? No way his name was Lousy.
Bro, my man.
That sounds like a joke.
Dude, my man be... How in the world do you actually say that? Hang on.
Bro named his kid Lousy. God, come on.
Bro, no way. No way. Oh, dude, look, it's a portrait.
Man, I ain't gonna lie, that portrait right there, like, kind of did him wrong.
Bro, he be looking kind of tired. he be looking kind of sleepy. But let's see here. Let's see. It is held that he then became an immortal hermit. All right, cool. Certain Taoist devotees held that Tao Te Ching was the avatar embodied as a book of the god Lao Jun, one of the 3 pure ones of the Taoist pantheon. Dude, this is like some Chinese lore, right? Like, it's like we're reading some actual Chinese lore. But anyways, I'll have to go back and look at this because I actually didn't know that Laozi. I didn't know that Laozi was a real guy. So yeah, I'm gonna have to look into this guy a little bit more because I only know about Sun Tzu, but apparently Lao Tzu is a real guy. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And I'm so sorry for doubting you. You actually know more about the philosophers of China than I do, by far. And so with that, thank you once again for support. And we are on to the next one.
And up next, huge shout out to Brian Money for putting in a $5 donation, and huge shout out to Noah Smith for also putting in a 5, along with Marcus Kennedy who put in a 3, as well as Linda DeSaliners for putting in a 2, Bruce Lee for putting in a 2 as well, and also Corey Ray for putting in a 1. And a huge shout out to all of you for that support. Of course, they did not have comments to address, which is why we addressed them all at once. But huge shout out for that support, because every bit of support helps the channel keep running, and we appreciate it very much. And we also have a question from Philip Fix's LSA, who put in a 5 and said, "Today I flew on an Airbus A319, a Bombardier CRJ-900, and a Boeing 737-900. Strangely, the Bombardier was the smoothest, and the 737 was the nicest." And Slava LSA.
And I would have to say, the Bombardier CRJ 900s, let me go pull that up. CRJ 900, they actually look really nice, I think, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Let me see here if I can get a better picture of this thing. Now, they're not the biggest planes out there, but I think, me personally, they look pretty cool. They're like the little connector planes.
Yeah, they're the jump jet.
Yeah, the jump jet. And I think they look pretty jumpy, like in my personal opinion. But the 737-900, damn, that's getting close to being a max, dude. You almost put your life in your own hands. But I would say that they're pretty nice as well. Let me go see if I can get that 737-900. There we go. This is the long boy variant of the 737. They just kept on making these things longer and longer, which is creating issues with the Max. But still, pretty cool. I mean, you know, who couldn't like them? Also, the 737-900ER doesn't even really look like a 737 anymore. It looks like it's almost turning into a 757. No joke.
Yeah, that's a thick one.
And that thing be long and thick. But beyond that, that sounded bad. Like we might have to wipe that. But anyways. Still, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help make this thing possible, Philip Fix. Thank you for throwing in some aircraft knowledge up on us. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you once again.
Yes, indeed. And up next, huge shout out to Havlin Tuft, or Highland Tuft. Jack Havlin Tuft, who put in a $5 donation and said, "What is your opinion on the ground-based mid-course interceptors at Fort Greely?"
Ground-based interceptors. Haviland Tuft, I'd have to be honest with you. I hate to say this because I don't like to feel like I'm cheating people of a question. I don't know a lot about the 49th Missile Defense Battalion in Fort Greely. So unfortunately, I'd have to declare ignorance at the moment about this and what this is and what it does. So I hate that. I absolutely hate that, Haviland. But this is one of the few times in modern channel history that I'm going to have to openly declare ignorance on something because I don't know much about it at all. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I will try to look into it a little bit and try and find out more. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And this one goes to Epic Trains Canada, who puts in a 5 and says, "Do a hood review on Yorkton, South Korea." I think Igor and Slav Ukraine.
Yorkton, Saskatoon, Matthew. It's Saskatoon.
Oh, Saskatoon.
Let's see.
SK?
Saskatchewan. Whoops. I got it wrong, too. We're stupid. We're so gooby. But anyways, let's go check it out. Hood review running on empty. Yorkton. Let's drop down and take a look. This ain't no hood. This is the suburbs. Oh, my lord. Oh, there was Saskatoon on the sign, 320 miles away. But anyways, this ain't no hood. This is a suburb.
It's wild to see that people have such varying definitions for what a hood looks like. I think once you've experienced the worst hood, there's no real hood anywhere else except for the hood. This is not really a hood in my opinion. This isn't that bad looking.
This ain't bad. Why in the world does everyone keep telling us to look at hoods and they're not hoods? They're just suburbs. What the
Man, we've been in the trenches. We were in the trenches for a while.
Dude, we lived in hell, apparently, and then we crawled out of the pits of hell and started running this show. That is opposed to Minneapolis. where things are apparently really cushy and people think they're hard, but they're really not because, you know, like it's just a city, you know, and they don't really get that bad in reality. Well, at least up there. But you know, you just don't know when you're living in your ivory towers in a nice place like Blaine in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. I mean, you'd never even know the hood because the hood is just so detached from you. It's nothing but the high class, higher end area of the suburbs. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And thank you once again, Epic Trains Canada, for the support and allowing us to take a look at your hood. Although I would say it's more of a suburb, which you're quite fortunate, because I don't think it's a bragging right to have a hood. Like, I think that's actually a really bad thing. So, you know, it's good to know that a lot of people consider suburbs hoods, because y'all apparently had a lot better of an upbringing than we did. But with that, I thank y'all so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next.
And the next one goes to Romeo S., who puts in a 5 and says, Glastonbury Festival in Somerset, UK this weekend. Keep up the good work.
Hey, and it sounds like a fun time out there at Somerset. We've actually driven through Somerset in the United Kingdom. I hope you have a fun time out there, Romeo S., at the Glastonbury Festival. I don't know a lot about music festivals, but one thing I do know is that bury do be Glaston. You know what I mean? And I got to thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope you have a fun time. And thank you so much for supporting this channel and helping us to keep up the good work. And oh, look, Glastonbury. Wow. It's right there. Cool.
Glastonbury.
And then you got this marsh out here. But anyways, still, thank you so much once again. We are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Quantum Fighter, who puts in a 5 and says, see, AB boys, back in the day, I sat in these 2 prisons, Alnstalten, Malmo, Kurseberg, David Shell Gumbla, something Malmo, just Google images.
Let's see here. That Anstalt, Malmo. Here we go. Here it is. There it is, the prison. What we got? That little thing be looking kind of sharp for a prison. Yeah, I want to see a prison close to where we were growing up. There was a prison close to where we were growing up when we was kids.
Come on, that work count?
You know what I'm talking about. you know what I'm talking
Come on, the women's prison.
I'm talking about that women's prison. There we
Oh man, this is the worst prison in the country, and they put women in it. It's terrible. Like, I've been in this prison before, on a assignment when I was working at a law firm. This place right here is horrific. I've been like deep in that prison, sketchy as hell. And also, they got some crazy people up in there too. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like some legit crazy people. But that place was like from the 1900s or something like that on the inside of it. Like, I don't even think it had air conditioner. I don't think. I can't recall if it did. I don't think it did. But it's rough, like just terrible. There's also some sketchy things that I've heard happens there as well, which we won't get into right now, but it's kind of sketchy.
It was sketchy, but this is what prisons, at least in Alabama, kind of look like. And they are rough as hell. I mean, they are incredibly rough. Let me see if there's any reviews on this prison. Nah, they shut it down for reviews.
I cut the review off.
Yeah, they cut them off. Like, apparently they were that bad. Oh, wait a minute, look. There's reviews on other places nearby. Well, you know, yeah, it's not that great. But anyways, yeah, you know, Julia Tutwiler Prison. That is a real prison right there. That place is hell. Let me see if I can show you another look from down here, further down the way. There's one of the guard towers. I mean, this place actually was built, from what I understand, in the 1930s, and it has not really been modified or renovated since then. And it is a women's prison, so it is entirely women inside the prison. It is hell in there. It sucks. We've heard terrible things about it, and we've also heard from some inmates in there that things are really, really bad. But hey, you know, what can you do? I mean, it's Alabama. So with that, I thank you so much for the support and also sharing with us what a Swedish prison looks like. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also I saw someone in the live chat here, Merchion. They said, I just watched the video from 9 hours ago. I love the informative video and love the content, and just subscribe. And also, welcome.
Hey.
That video today was put out has gotten the most subscribers in the last 28 days of any video we've put out. So far, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of realistically about 1.4 thousand subscribers that video alone has gotten, which is insane. A ton of new people have joined us from that video. I think largely because it was shared around so much on Reddit and various other places. And we've gotten a lot of new people in the LSA from that video. And we're very glad to have everybody that's new, including you, Merchian. But with that, we're moving on to our next super chat, which goes to LSA Master Sergeant Figment yet again, who says, LSA, hit the like button. That's an order.
And hit that like button. That is an order from LSA Master Sergeant Figment. And I thank you so much for the support, LSA Master Sergeant Figment, and always throwing in that support every single night and telling people to hit the like button. It's incredibly kind of you, and we thank you. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the final super chat of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the live chats.
And this one goes to Stephen Mosher, who says Cold War II.
And I would have to agree. Cold War II is likely nowadays. It looks as though it probably will happen. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that addressed that incredibly well. And with that, it is now time for us to move on into the live chats. But sadly, due to time constraints, we're only going to be able to get to a very limited number. So we're going to address the Morse code decoders of the stream, 3 live chats, and then we're going to be rounding out the stream. But before we get to that, we do have to mention the $10 super chat that was thrown in by Thomas Martin, the 3rd one ever. Hey! And Thomas Martin said it used to be talked about a lot, but not anymore. Not to be morbid, have the Russians gotten better about collecting their dead? Slava Ukraini and LSA thinks. No, they have not, Thomas Martin. From what we understand, most of them are left to rot for the large part, so they haven't really gotten a lot better. It's just that the Ukrainians generally clean up all of the casualties, both theirs and the Russians, fairly well wherever they can. And if they are not there, the Russians just allow them to rot wherever they lie. So with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support, Thomas Martin, and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, what do we got for the Morse code decoders, Matthew?
All right, and tonight we had the entire roster. We had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Rumpelstiltskin, and also David Millsaps. They said the Morse for tonight said, North Korea joining the war is a final act of desperation by both Russia and North Korea, and long live the LSA.
And the sound of money, and y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message. And I got to say, huge congratulations to y'all for getting that Morse code message correct, because that is absolutely impressive to know that y'all get that right day in and day out. Pretty cool stuff. And so with that, we are on to the 3rd to last question of the night.
All right, and this one goes to AF Kaplan, who says, has there been any official reaction from the Ukrainian government regarding North Korea sending troops?
Not that I've heard of yet, but I'm sure it will be coming around the corner. But for now, we have not. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the 2nd to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Terry Butterfield, who said, if you were Putin, knowing the mindset of the North Korean leadership, would you send accurate, long-range ballistic missiles to their country?
Yes, I would, because if you don't, you're not keeping up your end of the deal, meaning that the deal will fall apart. So if they want what they're wanting in the short term, they will end up sending that specific stuff directly to North Korea. So I would say yes, although it is an incredibly unstable and a very dangerous government in North Korea. I would, if I was the Russians and I was wanting their physical and material support, and that was what we agreed upon to get it, I would send it forward. Because that's the only way that they can make sure the deal stays in place and they keep getting what they need. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much for the $2 super chat, Wonder Everchild, the 5th super chat of the night, saying Marmot. Because it is great to know that people enjoy the Marmot. Holy moly, LSA Rock!
Wow.
But sadly, Wonder Everchild, I will have to say that we have already had the Marmot tonight. But we will show the Marmot.
He's already come and gone.
Yeah, I'll show the Marmot one more time. I'm not going to be able to give a whole skit for it, though, because to be quite honest, I'm withering away over here right now. I'm starving to death. But, hey, it's the Marmot, baby! And there we have
look, it's him. He's back.
It's Alan the Marmot. And so there you go. There's a little bit of Marmot, Wonder Everchild. And thank you for your 5th super chat to the channel ever and helping this thing to keep on running. And with that, it is now time for us to get on to another super chat. And then after we do that, we'll be able to get on to the final question of the night. And so, Matthew, take it away.
So this super chat went to LSA Rocks, who put in a massive $100 donation and took the place for the largest super chat of the night. And huge shout out to LSA Rocks. You've been doing that for actually a few nights now, and that is massive support on almost a daily basis. So huge thanks to you for helping to keep the work running, because it does indeed help us keep going. And he said, LSA World News now, and great stuff today.
And I got to say, thank you so much, LSA Rocks, for enjoying the LSA World News that we had today. It was a really cool segment to do. I actually love doing it because we actually got to get a little bit more variety in there. And we absolutely love variety in the news. But I got to thank you massively for that unbelievable, incredible, huge support, because it does help to make this channel possible and helps us to keep this thing running. And so thank you for saying that great stuff today, and thank you for your unbelievable support in helping this channel to be possible. And we also had another $5 super chat from Seeker Gather, who said the general must be possessed of wisdom, honesty, benevolence, courage, and discipline. Sun Tzu as compared to Lao Tzu, or as we like to call him, lousy. But still, thank you so much for the support, Seeker Gatherer, because that was another interesting statement by Sun Tzu. And Sun Tzu actually believed in fighting war without war, which is a very interesting concept as well, and a very good one to try and practice as best as possible. But with that, thank you so much once again for support, Seeker Gatherer, in helping this channel to keep on running, and thank you for the support as well. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Gold, who said, if you were the president of South Korea, how would you respond to the recent Russian move to North Korea and the poop balloons?
I would respond by providing weapons to Ukraine, and I'd also respond by militarizing the border region as a natural match to their escalation, which actually the South Koreans are doing right now. So I would be entirely honest. I would be doing exactly what they're doing right now. I think what they're doing is fairly measured in a very wise response based off of what they've been dealt. And so with that, I hope that does address that question incredibly well. And with that, it is the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank every single one of y'all so much once again for watching. Tonight, at the end of the stream, 71,260 people have watched the stream since we first went live 3 hours and 41 minutes ago. At the peak tonight, there were 9.4 thousand people here, actually. And we are entirely honored to have had each and every single one of y'all here, both all of the live viewers and all of the viewers who've been here in total. If y'all have enjoyed this channel, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because we are here 6 days a week, covering this news every single day except for Monday. And also in video form, we cover this news pretty much 7 days a week if there is news to cover every day. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, good night, folks. Thank you all for another great stream tonight. It was somewhat of a marathon-length stream. Sort of rarely these days we have those, but it was one tonight, and a huge shout-out to making it another great one. And with that, we'll see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next Nightly War News stream, and also midday tomorrow for the Short War Summary, which the Enforcer will be taking tomorrow. And with that, thank you all once again. Slava Ukraine. Here I'm Slava, and get some rest. Good night.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its